Chapter 102, Couldn't Understand. Xuemo slowly woke up. His face was pasted to the ground, dirt in his mouth. He felt slightly secure once he realized he was in his little yard. When he inspected his body, his heart finally relaxed. The situation was better than he had expected. Even though his injuries were serious, especially in his channels, but it was much better than he had imagined. What he was most afraid of was damaging his basic vitality. That was a fatal wound that even Jindan Xiaoxia could not save him from. Still all right. He struggled up from the dirt floor. He was used to the soreness of his entire body. Thinking about it now, he always ended up causing his own sorry state. If it happened multiple times, then one would get used to it. Even something like enduring pain was like that. However, when he saw the gray-beaked goose splattered like mud lying nearby, he was very shocked. He hurriedly stumbled over. It definitely was this female bird's labor that he could come back. If he didn't have it, he would have been very badly off. Coming to the gray-beaked goose, he carefully inspected her before his heart settled down. This female bird was just exhausted. Xuemo was very moved. Running to the stone room, and taking out the stone milk that he treasured so much, he dropped 3 drops to the gray-beaked goose. Silly bird, GE is pretty good to you," Xuemo said to himself. For Xiaoxia, using stone milk by itself didn't have much of a beneficial effect, but for Ling beasts, this was a natural treasure. Other than Xuemo, no one would feed 3 drops of stone milk to a second-grade gray-beaked goose. From the perspective of Jingxia, 3 drops of stone milk was much more valuable than a second-grade gray-beaked goose. However, this person and bird had great camaraderie. Even though this female bird had once taunted him, but GE is generous, and won't hold a grudge with you, silly bird, Xuemo thought. The effect of the stone milk was, as expected, extremely clear. Just seconds later, the gray-beaked goose stood up again, but looking at the gray-beaked goose, like a person, her wings tucked behind her back, puffing up her chest, walking the steps, Xuemo was dumbstruck. But it didn't manage to maintain it for very long before it became fretful, jumping about in the yard, jumping up and down. Xuemo gaped with wide eyes. But after a while, even jumping would not satisfy it. That pair of wings started to endlessly make strange movements. It looked like a convulsing strange bird dancing. It was really too horrible to look at, no sense of beauty at all. Xuemo could only give this cruel review. After thinking slightly, he understood what had happened. He had given too much stone milk to the gray-beaked goose. The potential of the gray-beaked goose was very average, and was not able to tolerate such a large amount of stone milk. Too much of the medicinal power was unable to be absorbed and caused it to act so crazily. Suddenly, Xuemo paled. This silly bird was running towards the Ling fields. "Stop!" Xuemo couldn't resist and swore, "If you ruin my fields, I'll break your legs." Frightened by Xuemo, the gray-beaked goose rushed to a stop and its head plunged into the ground, head down and tail up. It was still slightly frightened of Xuemo. When it swayed as it pulled its head out of the ground, Xuemo saw the situation was bad and yelled, "Are you dumb? Go fly into the sky." The gray-beaked goose used its wings to hit its head, its face giving an expression of realization. Then it shook its head drunkenly, flapping its wings and staggered as it shot into the air. Xuemo patted his chest in fear. These days, even birds were this strong. Having managed to stabilize the silly bird, Xuemo dragged his half-crippled body into the stone room. Once he crawled in, he entered meditation. He spent much longer in meditation than before, a full 20 hours before he woke up. Even though he hadn't been wounded too severely, but the wounds in the channels inside his body were not insignificant. The damaging power of the impure Ling energy was extremely serious. At that time, he really had been crazy. For Jingxia, to not even care for his life. However, thinking back to it, he felt that it wasn't right. Why had he been so reckless? He couldn't pin down a reason. That last attack, there were many places for him to savor. He and Changheng were not on the same level of power. It could be seen from the fact the other had forced him to the precipice with one move. Thinking about it now, Sui Mo still felt fear. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about Changheng's level of power, but he hadn't thought he would have struggled so much to stand up under just one of Changheng's moves. It really was a miracle that he was only wounded this little. He wasn't dejected. From level of cultivation, there was too much of a difference. Changheng was at the peak of Zhuji, someone heading for Ningmai. Sui Mo was only the 4th level of Zhuji. However, he was now at the 5th level. Just now, after a meditation of 20 hours, he had accidentally entered the 5th level. This wasn't all of the gains from the battle. That was why Sui Mo wasn't leaving after he woke up, but sitting, savoring the entire battle. The battle had been extremely short, just one move, yet the changes involved were not simple. Quite the opposite, there were many changes that Sui Mo had never even thought about before. He had even done something as damaging to himself as sucking Ling energy into his body to just barely make it through one of the other's moves. There were too many actions of Changheng that were worth learning from. The precision of Ling energy usage, the attack on the consciousness, the usage of presence and pressure. This meditation was another 10 hours. When he truly finished, he felt that he was extremely hungry. Running to the stores, he found some Ling grains. Not caring about his cooking skill, he personally made a Ling grain meal. The terrible cooking skills caused the taste of the meal to be rather bad. Sui Mo did swallow up every bit of it. The Ling energy contained in the Ling grains was extremely useful. After filling his hunger, he started to inspect his spoils of war. When he put all the trophies out, he instantly became excited. Moonwater black turtle armor, seal soldier, 1 3rd-grade belt and a pair of 3rd-grade vambraces. He was familiar with the attributes of Moonwater black turtle armor. The seal soldier could be used only one more time. That was something to use to save his life at a crucial time. Sui Mo naturally wouldn't be so dumb as to try it out. After memorizing the spell, he carefully put away the seal soldier. The important ones were the belt and the vambraces. Sui Mo had to admit that he had slipped up on the belt. The gold glittering belt only had one formation, martial bearing. Sui Mo thought this was a formation that had no use at all. Its purpose was to make the presence of the wearer more outstanding, and look stronger and magnificent. In other words, this was a decorative formation. Sui Mo wanted to spit blood. He felt that it could be understandable that women would wear talismans of this type, but a guy, wearing a belt carved with, martial bearing, formation in broad daylight, they were too much of a show-off. The belt was made up of soft gold sky silk. The quality was outstanding. Such good material carved with a formation that had no real use, what a waste. Sui Mo was extremely frustrated. Why did he pick such a useless item? However, what could be celebrated was that the vambraces did not disappoint him. There were 2 formations on it, 30,000 Kati, and, nimble fingers. 30,000 Kati, was able to greatly increase his power. In the eyes of other Xiozha, especially Sword Xiu, this might be a useless formation, but Sui Mo liked it very much. Wasn't it just perfect to match with, Vajra Profound Sutra? Thinking about having a pair of dark gold hands with the power of 1,000 Katis, unable to be destroyed, easily breaking down other people's flying sword, Sui Mo's heart jumped in excitement. Of course, this was just a fantasy. No one would let their flying sword get caught by another person's hand. However, as a trap, this was still one that people could not defend against. Nimble fingers, was a formation that was widely used. Its attribute was to increase the nimbleness of fingers. However, this was not that useful for Sui Mo. In low-level Xiozha, his finger motions was already very strong. The increase it would give him was almost nothing. Nimble fingers, was more effective the less familiar a Xianxia was with finger motions. Those that were familiar, there wasn't much of an effect. Okay, people shouldn't be too greedy. Suemo muttered inside. He needed to go to Dong Fu right now, and sell a talisman to gather up the jingsher needed to clear his debts. The belt probably couldn't sell for much jingsher. If it really wasn't enough, he had to sell this pair of vambraces as well. He was slightly reluctant. Vambraces that had nimble fingers on it were easy to buy. What he was reluctant to sell was the 30,000 kati formation. But he was poor, Suemo had no way around it. The gray-beaked goose had flown away, so Suemo could only flip out his flying paper crane. Lil Yellow, it's time for you to perform. Sitting on the paper crane, Suemo swayed and staggered his way to Dong Fu. The outer sect disciples of Wukong's sword sect, when they saw Suemo riding a paper crane, first paused, and then their faces were full of admiration as they bowed to Suemo. Did you hear? Xixiang went alone to challenge Ling Ying's sect. 1 against 5 and managed to beat all of them. All of Dong Fu has heard it. On the paper crane, Suemo's body froze and he started to sweat. This rumor. Yes. Such a stunning incident, how could I not have? I heard that there was a 10 zhang tall spider, whose gigantic mouth could swallow a bull whole, so Xixiang used only one move to beat it until it begged for mercy. Sitting on the paper crane, Suemo almost dropped off. It was more like he had almost begged for mercy. So strong. Look at Xixiang, such a powerful person, and is riding a first-grade paper crane. What is called living frugally? What is inscrutable? This is. Yes. Suemo finally couldn't bear it any longer and fled. An extremely well-attired middle-aged person was repeatedly examining a soft gold belt, expression excited and heated. Good thing. Really a good thing. TSK, look, this weaving, 72 joyful crane technique, isn't something any master can knit out. Look at the style, the 2 words, extremely noble. Very classic form, won't go out of style for at least 50 years. Soft gold silk is a good material. Gold yet not blinding, bright but not crass. Only this kind of fine material can display it to the best advantage. If it's something lesser, it would be too cheap, and the comfort would be less. Someone who can buy something like this, who would buy it if it wasn't comfortable? See this lucky knot, skilled. Using lucky knots to lock the edge, I've never seen something like it. This time, I've really broadened my visions. This, martial bearing, formation has had great care in it. This position, it perfectly covers the entire body. Wearing it, if you don't look elegant and grand, it must be the base material is terrible. Suemo dazedly came out of the store, the 100 treasures pouch at his waist full and bulging. He felt like he was in a dream. A soft gold belt carved with a martial bearing formation was actually the most expensive of all these talismans. These days, was it him that was crazy, or them that was crazy? He couldn't understand. Chapter 103, Inspirations. Suemo had felt before that he had a very good understanding of the world over that last 2 years. At least, he knew the area of Dong Fu very well. But when a decorative belt carved with martial bearing sold for such a price, he suddenly felt that there were still many things he did not understand. He quickly recovered from the blow that Jingsher had dealt him. Refocusing, Suemo found that there were many more people on the street than before. Strangely and exotically dressed people passed him by, and were clearly not locals. Bro, there's so many people. Is something big happening in Dong Fu recently? Suemo found a shopkeeper that was waving a bell outside. This shopkeeper discreetly swept across the talismans on Suemo's body and pushed out a smile, respectfully answering, "Elder may not know. These people have all come for the Dong Fu sword test conference. This sword conference has really shook Sky Moon Jie. For the last half-year, almost all of the young experts have gathered in Dongfu. He then made a little flattery, and earnestly said, this one sees that elder is young but is powerful. If you go to try, you certainly come out on top. Suemo finally understood. So it was the sword test conference. He had heard that Dong Fu was planning on holding a sword test conference but hadn't thought that it would be an event of such magnitude. He was very surprised. Having understood the situation, Suemo didn't have much interest left. Something like a sword test conference, it didn't have too much to do with him. A place where all the experts will gather, since he was only a Zhuji, there was nothing for him to do there. If Wei Xingxixiang was attending, he would go watch. Other than that, he didn't have any interest. It was more practical to earn Jingshi and cultivate. He hummed a little tune, sitting on the paper crane and swaying as he flew back to Wukong Mountain. Walking into the little west wind yard, he was struck dumb. A snow-white big bird was standing on his rooftop, posturing. The proudness of the aura, it was like a princess high up, dressing up in front of a mirror. These days, when did birds become show-offs? He seemed to feel that this white bird was somewhat familiar, but no matter how hard he thought, he didn't remember who in the sect would have such an extraordinary-looking big bird. This big bird was entirely snow-white without one feather discolored. The beak was a pure clean sky blue. It looked extremely anthropomorphic, and intelligent. This mount, it definitely would be expensive. Who lost their mount? Suemo couldn't help but wonder. The snowy bird that had been posturing saw Suemo standing at the door out of the corner of its eyes, and its body froze. Suemo caught this little movement. He first paused, and then unhesitatingly swore, silly bird, get down. So this was his gray-beaked goose. But, why did it change to look like this? Suemo wondered inside. Was this the effect of the stone milk? The snowy bird bashfully came down from the roof, running on front of Suemo and rubbed fawningly against him. The hairs on Suemo's body stood up, stay away from me, female bird. The snowy bird seemed to hurtfully lower its head. Ah, so the feathers changed. Oh, your body got slightly larger. Suemo made 2 circles around the snowy bird. Seeing Suemo examining her, the snowy bird instantly puffed up its chest, exuding a proud demeanor. Seeing the snowy bird act like this, Suemo was infuriated. He slapped the snowy bird's head, angrily saying, you almost ruined Ge's Ling fields, did you know that? Ah! I'm telling you, if you dare to damage the Ling fields one bit, Ge will pluck your feathers and cook you. Hearing Suemo say, pluck, the snowy bird was aghast, its pair of wings securely blocking its chest as it stumbled back a few steps. Seeing the anthropomorphic move of the snowy bird, Suemo grinned. He really didn't have to argue with a silly bird. Just go somewhere else. Suemo threw down these words and then went into his rooms. His life had finally returned to normal. After clearing his debts, the remaining Jingshi had been silently taken away by Pu Yao. Suemo could not do anything. Pu Yao was just too skilled. He didn't need Suemo's agreement, and it didn't matter where Suemo hid it, he could always find it easily, and then unceremoniously take all of it. When Suemo found out, the Jingshi had disappeared for a few days. With fury, Suemo ran over to talk with Pu Yao. Each time, he was defeated by Pu Yao's indifference. To go from wealthy to penniless in the blink of an eye, Suemo wanted to spit blood. However, what comforted him was that, perhaps it was the effect of the Jingshi, the sea of flames inside his consciousness had recovered greatly. Without Jingshi, he couldn't do anything. Suemo could only live. The growth of the fiery red flower in the Ling garden was very good. They would be ready for harvest soon. In comparison, the Ling grasses that he had planted in the Ling gardens matured first. This made him very excited. All of these Ling grasses had been planted in preparation for him to make new Dan. He hadn't planned on selling those 20 mu of ling grasses, it was enough for his own use. After harvesting all the ling grasses and processing them, he gained such a large amount of ling grasses that he had to set aside a room specifically to store it. He did not need to go to the Dan room to make Dan anymore. With the stalagmite fire, he could make Dan anywhere. This was also why every person who did Dan making or forging dreamed of having a fire of their own. Adding on the streaming fire core management formation on the jade pendant, the biggest barrier to making ling Dan for him was his cultivation. The highest Dan medicine that a Zhuji Xiaoxia could make was 2nd grade. If he wanted to make 3rd grade ling Dan, he must have a cultivation of Ningmai. Without Jingshi, Zuoyamo had great motivation. He decided to not leave his rooms, furiously making Dan every day. Bone tempering Dan, evil removing Dan, and spirit increasing Dan. Under his furious efforts, the number quickly increased. The effect of these low-level ling Dan was not outstanding in any way, but Zuoyamo planned on using quantity to overcome quality. Without heed to anything else, he just used up all his materials. 200 bone tempering Dan, 200 evil removing Dan, and 200 spirit increasing Dan. Zuoyamo used 3 gourds to store these Dan medicines separately. What amazed Zuoyamo was that he had accidentally made 10 2nd grade bone tempering Dan, 8 2nd grade evil removing Dan, and 10 2nd grade spirit increasing Dan. 1st grade was worthless, but 2nd grade could sell for a pretty good price. However, Zuoyamo didn't plan on selling even one of them. The Jingshi he would get would all be taken away by Puyao. Consuming a bone tempering Dan, Zuoyamo started to channel the gravestone version of Vajra Profound Sutra. As expected, a burst of medicinal energy entered his body. Each time that he used an evil removing Dan first before cultivating, some black stains would appear on his body. The effect of consuming spirit increasing Dan was the most evident. Eating it and then practicing embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, he could clearly feel the medicinal energy entering his mind. Seeing that this method was effective, and having so much of the ling Dan, Zuoyamo furiously shoved ling Dan in his mouth each time before he cultivated. After more than 10 days, there was significant progress with Vajra Profound Sutra. Golden patterns appeared on his chest. If he channeled ling energy, the water drop sword could not wound him. The progress of his spirit was even more apparent. Without him detecting it, he had reached 4th breath. In the void of his sea of consciousness, 4 stars lined up in a row. This was all from eating Dan. He had ate several dozen of the 1st grade ling Dan, but no Dan had much of an effect. So he could only eat the 2nd grade ling Dan. After eating the 2nd grade ling Dan, he experienced the gigantic gap between grades. The effect of the 2nd grade ling Dan was more than 10 times the 1st grade ling Dan. There was about 100 pieces of each type of ling Dan. They wouldn't sell for much Jingshi if he sold it. It was both obscure and low level, there was no market. He decided to feed the rest of the ling Dan to the silly bird and the black gold worm. The black gold worm ate ling Dan like thin crisps, crunch, crunch, crunch. The ling Dan would visibly shrink. Silly bird ate ling Dan more like it was eating beans, jiebang jiebang. Seeing them enjoy eating so much, Zuoyamo would become hungry as well, and ate them as snacks, chewing on them once in a while. After silly bird transformed, Zuoyamo had pulled it to be assessed. Right now, it was a 3rd grade blue-beaked snowy bird. The value of it had increased exponentially. Right there, someone had asked Zuoyamo whether he would sell it, and was willing to pay 200 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi. Zuoyamo was extremely tempted. Seeing the situation, silly bird hurriedly ran in front of him and pretended to be pitiful. It even used that pair of wings to pretend to wipe tears. Zuoyamo didn't know to laugh or cry. The people in the surroundings were amazed, and thought this bird was extremely intelligent. The price instantly flew to 500 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi. Zuoyamo still refused. He looked at the smug face of silly bird and thought to himself. Oh, it wasn't that Ge didn't bear to part with the bird, but if he had Jingshi, it would only fall into Pu Yao's hands. All of his attention was on cultivation. At the beginning, he had used the whirlpool ling sucking method to make the yin fire beads and found it very useful. The amount of ling energy taken in was much more efficient than any other scripture. However, the impurities in the ling energy taken in this way was extremely high. If he could think of a way to get rid of the impurities in the ling energy, then his cultivation would increase extremely quickly. He suddenly thought about the process of using the stalagmite fire to make Dan. The stalagmite fire could burn away the unnecessary impurities and provide what he needed. Maybe, he could use the stalagmite fire to get rid of the impurities in the ling energy. The more he thought, the more plausible he found the idea. Without anything else to do, he started to experiment with this strange idea. Zhuo Mo was never afraid of trying out new things. Like the golden crow pill, like the whirlpool ling suction method, like merging sword essences. No one told him what was possible, so he had to try for himself. In any case, his cultivation was low. Even if he was injured, it wouldn't be too major, he frequently comforted himself with this. There were too many problems involved. Like how to use the stalagmite fire to purify, no jade scroll had ever mentioned that it was possible to use fire seeds to burn ling energy. This process also had to be carried out inside his body. After ling energy was taken into the body, it would pass through the channels. In other words, the setting to forge the ling energy had to be in his channels. Zhuo Mo was very doubtful and felt that this was extremely unlikely that his fragile channels could contain something as terrifying as the stalagmite fire. Then that led to another problem he had to overcome. He needed to strengthen his channels, making sure the stalagmite fire would not damage his channels. A stream of complex questions gave Zhuo Mo a headache. He felt that he had no place to start. For some reason, he suddenly thought of Changheng who had beaten him so terribly. The dejection that had come into his heart was replaced by motivation. He gritted his teeth, saying to himself, "Gu holds grudges." Chapter 104, Hesitation. The first problem was strengthening his channels. Only stronger channels could tolerate the stalagmite fire. Otherwise Zhuo Mo would be frozen into a popsicle by the stalagmite fire. This first problem was enough to trip Zhuo Mo up. The only scripture that he had related to strengthening the body was Vajra Profound Sutra. The effects of the Vajra Profound Sutra didn't look very bad right now, and Zhuo Mo tried to find a section on it relating to strengthening channels. He was quickly disappointed. There wasn't too much in Vajra Profound Sutra on strengthening channels. Zhuo Mo, unsatisfied, ran to the records room, searching everywhere for scriptures that could strengthen his channels. He quickly found related content from some of the body cultivation jade schools. However, he was even further disappointed. Each of the jade scrolls clearly wrote that strengthening channels was a very profound field. Body cultivation first trained the flesh, then the tendons, and then the bones before the channels. With his weak Zhuji cultivation, he couldn't even start to think about it. Zhuo Mo was not discouraged. This was not the first time he had encountered an obstacle like this. The jade scrolls that he had struggled so much to obtain were unclear in many places. That required him to think about it himself. If one path did not work, he would change to another. He could always find a workable solution. Since it was not possible to strengthen his channels, that meant that he could not carry out his idea of purifying ling energy in his channels. What about on the outside? If he could purify the ling energy outside the channels, then the ling energy he would absorb into his body would become pure ling power. Zhuo Mo sank into deep thought. How could he purify ling energy outside the body to turn it into ling power? Inside the body, ling energy was invisible and non-tangible. How could he purify it? Each question seemed to be beyond his limits, but he did not plan on giving up. For this sword test conference, who are we sending? Yan Lu looked at sect leader Pei Yuan Ran. There was only the two of them in Wukong Hall. Xin Yen was in seclusion forging. Shi Feng Rome was in seclusion making Dan. Naturally, Wei Sheng will have to go. I just don't know if he'll come out in time, sect leader said, Sui Mo can also go. Haha, the little guy ran to make a fuss at Ling Ying's sect. I heard he was extremely impressive, Yan Lu smiled. The Ling Ying sect, just by relying on their wealth had always been extremely arrogant towards the other sects of Dongfu. There were many that thought them an eyesore. Zhuo Mo's talent is not bad. It's a pity he cannot focus on the sword, sect leader said with regret. It could be considered an honorable defeat, that he lost on Chang Heng's hands. Yan Lu shrugged carelessly, it's good even if he does not focus on the sword. In the future, the sect needs people like Sui Mo. Sect leader nodded and did not say anything. He turned to say, you can go take a look at Luoli. The incident last time really shocked him. He should have improved. Just these three? Yan Lu asked. Just these three, the sect leader added, there's no rush. There's still time until the preliminary sword test conference. Yan Lu excitedly clenched his hands, I'm looking forward to it. If Wei Xin gets out in time, he will definitely shock everyone. The sect leader gave a light smile. Even though he did not say anything, but the flash of light in his eyes revealed his thoughts. The great harvest of fiery red flower once again bloated Zhuo Mo's purse. The price of fiery red flower had risen again during this time, to now 2.5 third-grade jingxia per tael. The 80 mu of Ling Garden had, in total, produced 22 caddies of first-grade fiery red flower. Other than that, there was almost 1 caddy of second-grade fiery red flower. The price of second-grade fiery red flower had grown to 60 pieces of third-grade jingxia per tael. Taking off the previous payment of 60 pieces of third-grade jingxia, in total, Zhuo Mo's income was 1,090 pieces of third-grade jingxia. This was his biggest payout of jingxia yet. To stop Pu Yao from secretly taking it like usual, Zhuo Mo decided to attack first. Based on income, Zhuo Mo definitely was in the high ranks of Dongfu, but all of his jingxia was stolen by Pu Yao before they even got warm in his purse. Pu Yao saw Zhuo Mo's nervousness, and mocked, just 1,000 pieces of third-grade jingxia, it's just 2 pieces of fourth-grade jingxia, do you have to be like this? Zhuo Mo was completely unaffected. I'll exchange it for something. He then added, that I can use. Pu Yao said slowly, haven't you been looking for a way to purify Ling energy recently? Zhuo Mo's mind became alert. Yes. Do you know how? There's nothing wrong with your idea. Pu Yao snickered, but you know too little. Even if you have a good idea, you cannot solve it. I'll exchange for this. Zhuo Mo unhesitatingly said. He. Pu Yao lightly swept his sleeve. A stream of clinks of jingxia hitting each other sounded, but Zhuo Mo did not feel pain this time. He only stared at Pu Yao, waiting for him to keep talking. Then I will teach you. In reality, this is a very simple method. Pu Yao's face resumed its habitual indifference. TSK. Even though your idea is only superficial, but to think of it with your skill level isn't easy. Pu Yao's indifference gradually disappeared without him noticing, his voice becoming serious. Xianxia, Yao, Mo, the three of them, the one that has the hardest time to create Ling power is Xianxia. Seeing Zhuo Mo's surprised eyes, Pu Yao laughed lightly. You must find it weird, that the Xianxia who focus on Ling power as their primary have the hardest time with Ling power. No matter if it is Yao or Mo, they are born with the ability to communicate with nature. Like us Yao, once we are born, we can manipulate Ling energy of the world. Mo, their bodies can automatically absorb the Ling energy of the world, and naturally get rid of impurities, that they use to temper their body. They do not need to do anything for their blood and flesh to be filled with Ling energy. Based on natural talent, Xianxia cannot be compared to us. However, they are very good at learning. You have practiced many scriptures now. Do you know what is the core of scriptures? What is it? Mo, entranced, asked reflexively. Formations. Pu Yao's eyes became extremely deep, as though he was looking through the ages. Each scripture is a kind of formation. Scriptures, most of them are divided into parts. The first is absorption. If it cannot take in Ling energy of the world, then the scripture is useless. Then it is forging. If it cannot purify the Ling energy, then it is not useful, and would harm the user. After that, it is storage. If it cannot store the power, it's useless no matter how much is absorbed and purified. Mo was dumbstruck. No one had broken down scriptures like this before. Pu Yao stated it so simply, without any part that was difficult to comprehend. Mo finally pondered it, and instantly understood. It really was so. Good scriptures, the efficiency of taking Ling energy is higher, the purification is faster, and it can store more Ling power. It's just this simple. Pu Yao sighed. You must be wondering why us Yaomua can naturally absorb Ling energy. That is because us Yaomua have natural formations in our body. This is a blessing from nature. It is a pity that our intelligence is not as great as Xianxia, ignorant of the treasure in our possession. Millions of years, we only knew to act according to our instinct, never thinking of the mechanisms behind it. Only when Xianxia started to rise did we start to study, but by that time, we were too far behind Xianxia and could only develop in two other directions. Oh, that's off topic. Pu Yao suddenly gave a smile. Let us return to your question. Your problem is easy to solve for all time. How about it, do you want to try? Pu Yao was already extraordinarily beautiful. That smile, it seemed to light up the sea of consciousness. Even Mo was shocked. He was suspicious that, if Pu Yao appeared in Dong Fu, there wouldn't be a woman in Dong Fu that would be able to resist his spell. But, a male growing up to look like this, it really was a crime. What method? Mo asked, slightly hesitant. You had to reverse Pu Yao's words. If he said something like it would be solved forever, then it most likely would be continuously troublesome in the future. Your luck isn't bad. You encountered me, Pu Yao resumed his lazy expression. Didn't I already say to you just now, Yaomua can naturally gather Ling energy and purify it. Coincidentally, this kind of natural seal formation, I have a little knowledge. Such a thing as good as this, how could those experts give up on it? Mo didn't quite believe it. The Yaomua that Xianxia had captured could not be counted. If there really was some secret on the bodies of Yaomua, it should have been discovered long ago. Ha! Pu Yao smiled mockingly. They've been angling for this thing for a long time. Pity, nature blessed us Yao with this just so Yaomua will not go extinct. How about it, want to try? How high can it increase? Is there any side effects? Would it conflict with practicing scriptures? Mo asked a string of questions. How much can it increase? This depends on your body. At least, it would be multiple times what it is now. Side effects? Of course there would some. In this world, is there anything that is only beneficial? Losses and gains, I shouldn't have to teach you such a simple tenet. As to cultivating scriptures, it wouldn't affect it, definitely wouldn't affect it. Pu Yao resolutely said. Mo lowered his head, sinking into his thoughts. Pu Yao did not hurry him, idly sitting on the gravestone. For some reason, Mo had a feeling that the following decision would change and influence his entire life. He did not know why he would have such a feeling. He had learned many things from Pu Yao, but never had a feeling like this before. This feeling was so strong, so clear. He was hesitant. He had been very happy these recent days. Even though he was still worried about Jingshi, but everything was developing so well. He had improved step by step. Each day was very full. If he kept going like this, he definitely wouldn't have to worry about Jingxia in the future, and could live a very good life. In the sect, he would also have a pretty good position. He could study Ling plants, could study Dan making, could study. But that repeated dream, like fate, it always seemed to accidentally guide him towards another direction. Changing features and erasing the mind, his body was still carrying a past of unknown hardship and cruelty. Head down, Suomo's hands fisted unconsciously, his entire body minutely trembling. What was it that he wanted? What was it that he could not avoid? Chapter 105, Mo Matrix and Yao Seeds. Mo looked slightly scared at the variety of Ling grasses and strange knickknacks placed in front of him, like 3 sticks of incense made from the ashes of burnt sky net Yao hair, a small bottle of bitter dove Mo blood, a nauseatingly smelly ferret Mo gallbladder. He had bought all those things according to Pu Yao's orders. He ran all over Dong Fu, and made a trip to see he roamed before he managed to gather all of it. These weird things were all extremely expensive. He spent all of the 1,000 pieces of third-grade Jingxia. Pu Yao was strangely generous this time, proactively taking out the Jingxia. These strange materials, they were all parts of some Yaoma's body. The corpses of Yaoma killed in the Yao hunt would speedily be broken down by skilled professional butchers to useful parts. The bodies of Yaoma were rich in Ling energy, and had many wondrous effects, so they were used in great amounts in Dan making and forging. The organs and flesh of Yaoma can be added to Dan. The hides of Yaoma were usually abnormally strong in good materials to make Ling armor. Their teeth and claws could be forged into high-grade flying swords and talismans. In thousands of years, the practice of the Yao hunt had never stopped. Other than revenge, it was mostly motivated by profit. However, the dangers in the Yao hunt were too high and the gains were not much. Therefore, raising Ling beasts had become popular. The attributes of Ling beasts could not compare to the Yaoma, and the raw materials after killing the beasts were not as high grade. It competed on the numbers and the low cost. Even a small sect like Wukong's sword sect had its own specialized stables. It could be seen just how widespread raising Ling beast livestock was. Pu Yao had high demands for these materials. They had to come from Yaoma and not Ling beasts. This was also why it was so expensive. Any material relating to Yaoma were not cheap. But Suomo looked at the strange things on the table and his heart shook. He felt that it seemed like they were going to hold a dark ritual, and these strange fleshy organs were the tribute. He usually studied formations and scriptures, and it was not as terrifying as this. There's nothing really good. We can only just compromise. Pu Yao said, slightly helplessly. These things, they can just barely create the lowest kind of Mo matrix. Mo matrix? What is that? Suomo pushed down the terror in his heart to ask. This is very complicated to explain. Pu Yao picked up the materials and inspected as he talked. You can think of them as a kind of formation, a natural formation. It is a formation made out of blood, fur, feathers, and vitality. Humph, Xiaoxia always want to decode the mystery of this, but the mechanisms in here, it's not so easy to crack. Then what are we doing now? Don't be dumb, do you have to ask me such a simple question? Pu Yao looked at Suomo like he was an idiot. Of course it is to make you a Mo matrix. Make a matrix? Mo matrices can be made. Didn't you say no one has cracked it? Suomo was very shocked. They cannot, that does not mean that I cannot. Pu Yao snorted, and said conceitedly, before, he suddenly seemed to have realized something and closed his mouth. Pu Yao didn't want to say it. Suomo was curious but he didn't ask. Pointing at another pile of Ling grasses, he asked, these Ling grasses? Also for the Mo matrix? The materials on the table had been clearly divided into 2 piles, one of Ling grasses, another of Yaoma parts. That is to add something else to you. Pu Yao snickered, a very interesting thing. Oh. Suemo nodded, not understanding. Suddenly, he felt his eyelids became heavy, he was so sleepy. Don't forget. Even in death, you must not forget. He was having a dream again. Suemo sighed. He was like an indifferent spectator watching his own dream. He knew that it was useless whatever he said, no one would reply to him, or rather, this dream just wanted to give him a question. He was waiting to wake up. When he opened his eyes, he saw Pu Yao's handsome and enchanting face. Welcome back. Pu Yao said smugly and with deep meaning. Suemo sat up and instantly felt pain. There seemed to be wounds over every part of his body. He could smell the thick scent of blood in the air. Was it successful? Suemo was frightened by his own voice. It was completely dry. Success. I'm ashamed to use such good words for this kind of trash. But there's no way around it. You are too poor. What you used were my funds. You have to pay me back soon. Pu Yao said, slightly disdainful. Seeing Suemo grit his teeth in pain, Pu Yao seemed very happy. I added a very simple MO matrix to your body. Oh, this matrix, I found it on the body of a copper rhino. It's very primitive and simple. It can automatically absorb in the Ling energies from the surroundings and strengthen your body. Your body will appear copper-colored. Since you have been practicing Vajra Profound Sutra, you can use it as a disguise and no one would be able to see it. Suemo struggled up and instantly became alarmed. Two thick red lines went from the center of his palms, following his arms to his chest and intersecting there. From the chest, they separated again downwards, following his legs to the center of his feet. The intersection at his chest was like the two red lines had made a knot. Seeing Suemo's wariness, Pu Yao said unconcernedly, don't worry, after 2 days, these lines will merge into your flesh. Even if someone has something like sky eyes, they can't see it. Suemo couldn't help but sigh. If he went about with such an alarming tattoos like this, he wouldn't have good days to live. This MO matrix is relatively simple, so don't expect it to have many abilities. Pu Yao said irresponsibly. You are just too poor. Without Jingshi, there naturally isn't anything good. Suemo felt the space between his brows hurt and couldn't help but reach up. When his hand touched his forehead, his fingers seemed to have encountered something abnormal. What is that? Suemo suddenly remembered that Pu Yao said he was adding something else. A Yao seed. Pu Yao was extremely smug. This thing cannot compare to a true Yao seed, but for you, it's more than enough. Suemo knew about Yao seeds. Yao had Yao seeds, Mo had Mo cores. This was the standard to judge the importance of Yamo. Xianxia would also form gold cores, but this gold core was made from Ling energy and was not some tangible object. It would automatically dissipate after death. Yao seeds and Mo cores, they were tangible objects that grew in the body and were an extremely important material. He had only heard of it before, but had never seen it. Yao seeds? Suemo asked in alarm. What does it do? Just try and see. Pu Yao said. Hearing this, Suemo hurriedly started embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation. As it started, he instantly detected the difference. The Ling energy in the surroundings competed to rush into him. All the openings in his body naturally opened, the Ling energy easily slipping into his body. His flesh was like a wondrous filter net, easily filtering out the impurities of the Ling energy, which turned to sparks of light that then entered his flesh and bones. Suemo was slightly dumbstruck. It really was as Pu Yao said, just as easy as breathing. There was none of the usual struggle. The Ling energy seemed very close and intimate with him. He was exhilarated. With the Mo matrix, the speed of his cultivation would multiply. He thought about the Yao seed that Pu Yao mentioned. Even though he did not know what a Yao seed looked like, but it definitely was related to the consciousness. As expected, he quickly found the Yao core on his forehead. It was a blood-red crystal, a bit like the blood crystals on Pu Yao's ears, but in terms of brightness and clarity, it was far worse. What Suemo found extremely wonderful was that, with a Yao seed, the shape of his spirit had transformed. His consciousness had been like a ball of mist before. Now, his consciousness was like a jellyfish, having lots of thin slender tentacles with the Yao seed at the very center. These thin spiritual tentacles, with Suemo as the center, floated in the surroundings. Everything in the surroundings was clearly mirrored in his mind. After he started cultivating his spirit, his sixth sense had become extremely sensitive. With the Yao seed, this sensitivity had multiplied. His mind moved and those spiritual tentacles nimbly danced around him according to his wishes. Having been worried beforehand, Suemo finally could not disguise the glee inside. To say of nothing else, just Dan-making, his success rate would definitely improve dramatically. The benefit from these two things, even if he had to pay a price, it was worth it. With the Mo matrix and the Yao seed, the speed of his cultivation would increase multiple times. Just as Suemo was celebrating, Pu Yao broke in, "Don't be happy too early. I've never done this Mo matrix and Yao seed to anyone before. If there's any side effects, you just have to deal with it yourself. You need to study formations now. The speed of taking in Ling energy is faster, but if you cannot store it, it's all useless." Suemo gradually calmed down from his joy. Pu Yao was right. Right now, the rate of taking in Ling energy was multiple times what it had been, but if he could not solve the problem of storing it, it truly was useless. "Learn formations," Pu Yao said with a rare seriousness. "Right now, you only need to study formations." "Only study formations?" Suemo was slightly puzzled. He felt Pu Yao's worlds were too definite. "Yes." Pu Yao explained. "No matter if it is Dan-making, or sword scripture, they are formations in the end. You have to learn on your own. The formations of Xianxia are too complex and broad, yet completely different from the understanding of us Yao. We have a hard time understanding many things. You cannot understand them." Suemo didn't believe it. Even though he felt Pu Yao was just a dumb Yao, but in the matters of cultivation, one Pu Yao was worth 100 of him. Something that even Pu Yao could not understand, how could he understand it? Extremely rarely, Pu Yao had a grave expression. He said something that Suemo did not understand. "It has nothing to do with methods, it has to do with belief." Even though he could not understand it, but Suemo felt that Pu Yao was extremely serious when he said this. It should be the most serious thing that Pu Yao had said up until now. He silently memorized this sentence. "Then Dan-making? Sword scriptures?" Suemo was still slightly hesitant. Pu Yao had finally reached the end of his patience with Suemo. "Idiot, they are also formations. Don't be tricked by appearances. In any case, just concentrate on formations." "I don't have jade scrolls," was what Mo weakly said. Pu Yao irresponsibly spread out his hands. "I don't have a way either." Suddenly, Pu Yao smiled darkly. Suemo's heart couldn't help but have a bad feeling. As expected, he heard Pu Yao formally say, "All right. I feel there is a need to discuss the matter of my payment." Chapter 106, The Half-Finished Product Processing Maniac. "You know I do not have Jingxia." Suemo could only say. "Oh, you can just owe me." Pu Yao said unconcernedly, "This time, you spent 2 pieces of 4th grade Jingxia." "Oh, adding on my wages, seeing that everyone is so familiar, let's give a discount, just 8 pieces of 4th grade Jingxia. In total, 10 pieces of 4th grade Jingxia. Oh, repay it in 3 months. 1 month over, it will be 2 times the number." Zuomo's limbs felt cold. "Pu, this price is too outrageous." "Oh, no, I'm a Sky Yao, my appearance fee is very expensive. Pu Yao shamelessly said. 10 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi, that was 5,000 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi, 3 months. Sui Mo felt dizzy. He made one last effort. This is impossible to complete. Oh, don't worry, I like interest. Pu Yao gave an intoxicating smile. In Dong Fu, Sui Mo sat in the store, all his attention on controlling the stalagmite fire. In that ball of white flame, there was a glowing liquid boiling. A Xianxia was standing at the side, not daring to breathe, as he stared nervously at the milky white ball of flame. Suddenly, the stalagmite fire disappeared, a clear medicinal fluid floated silently in front of Sui Mo. A fragrance instantly spread out in the air. Sui Mo skillfully urged the medicinal fluid into the already prepared jade bottle. When the fluid entered the bottle, he instantly shoved a cork in. Your bell grass fluid, 20 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi. Sui Mo expressionlessly said. Bro, can you be a bit cheaper? This is the 9th time I've come here. The Xianxia pleaded. Sui Mo raised his expressionless face, my appearance fee is very expensive. The other was speechless and could only painfully take out 20 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi. Sui Mo didn't even look, just shoved it into the 100 treasures pouch at his waist before closing his eyes to recover Ling energy. After a while, he opened his eyes. Next one. Li Yingfeng hurriedly let another person in. Ever since Sui Mo had come to the store, she was shocked at the popularity of the business. Sui Mo Shitty had gotten a strange white fire from somewhere that was extremely icy. Sui Mo Shitty had also displayed his business skills. He received all kinds of weird jobs, like purifying and making medicinal fluids, forging certain raw materials. These jobs that she had never heard of before, Sui Mo Shitty could do all of them. She quickly found that all the jobs that Sui Mo Shitty provided were middlemen jobs such as purification. He actually did not take requests for dan making. She had once been extremely puzzled at this. Sui Mo Shitty was most skilled in dan making. Only later did she understand the meaning of it. That was efficiency. Just making the intermediate product, with Sui Mo Shitty's terrifying recovery rate, the efficiency was shockingly high. He was like a human-shaped stove, not knowing exhaustion. In comparison, Shitty's terrifying control of fire did not shock her too much. Up until now, Sui Mo Shitty had not failed once. Li Yingfeng was amazed but not shocked. Sui Mo Shitty was a genius at dan making. It was normal for him to be skilled at controlling fire. His terrifying success rate quickly became famous in Dong Fu. Everyone knew that Dong Fu had a store called the Wukong grocery store that had a zombie-like guy who had godly talents at controlling fire, and even rarer, it was a white cold fire. The grade of that white cold fire was not high, but it was extremely powerful. The processed products that were created were all of high quality. Cold fire was hard to find in the first place, and the number of Xianxia that had cold fire was pitifully few. Usually, a Xianxia that had a fire was either skilled in dan making, cooking, or forging. Who was willing to work on intermediate products? A Xianxia that only made intermediate products suddenly appearing out of nowhere, the Xianxia that had a need instantly flowed in. This person was wearing a hat. When he saw Sui Mo, his steps paused. What do you want me to forge? Sui Mo said, not even raising his head. 4th grade cold magnet. The other said. Sui Mo was slightly surprised. He raised his head to glance at the other and shook his head, I can only process 3rd grade. 4th grade is out of my limits. Please find someone else. Stalagmite fire was only a 2nd grade fire seed. If it wasn't that his consciousness was strong, and his ability to control fire was high, he could only process 2nd grade items. Even so, 3rd grade was Sui Mo's present limit. He didn't even need to think about the 4th grade cold magnet. The other said in a deep voice, can you cut this 4th grade cold magnet into 4 pieces? Cut. Suemo thought and then said, I can try. The other took out a black stone. Embedded in the rock was dots of blue ice. He handed it to Suemo. Suemo didn't take it. The payment will be 200 pieces of third-grade jingsha. Okay. The other replied simply. Rich person. Suemo's heart was full of disdain, but his hand quickly took this fourth-grade cold magnet. The reason that he had thought of making intermediate products was that he had been forced by the demand for jingsha. After taking on the huge debt of 5,000 pieces of third-grade jingsha, Suemo had to work his mind to find ways of earning jingsha. Planting fiery red flower was a pretty good method, but that meant that he had to rent a Ling garden 5 times what he had rented before. What he felt helpless about that was, even if he used all the Ling farmer spells he had, the growing period of the fiery red flower wouldn't be shorter than 5 months. He unhesitatingly dismissed this plan. If it went over a month, it would multiply. 5 months meant that Suemo needed to pay back 20,000 pieces of third-grade jingsha. Without any other way, he could only plan around the stalagmite fire. Hoping that he could earn 5,000 third-grade jingsha by selling Dan in 3 months was not realistic. After he finished learning, it would have been too late. An idea had suddenly sparked and he thought of making intermediate products. He was extremely practiced at purifying and concentrating Ling grasses right now. The purification and tempering of forging was not hard to learn. Stalagmite fire was a rare cold fire, extremely suited for processing those yin and cold attributed Ling materials and Ling grasses. The number of xianxia that had fire seeds was pitifully small, those that had cold fire was even less, and Suemo was the only one willing to make intermediate products. Originally, this business was not very profitable since it was just for intermediate profits and he could only take the processing fee. However, after getting the Yao seed, Suemo's control of fire increased dramatically. The stalagmite fire was almost alive in his hands and the efficiency was astonishing. With the Mo matrix, his Ling energy recovery rate was extremely high. After meditating for a little while, he would be back at full power. Suemo had not solved the problem of storing Ling power. Even though his absorption rate of Ling energy had increased and the effects showed in tempering his body, but the increase in his cultivation had been limited. Due to this problem, he had gone to discuss it with Pu Yao many times. There was too much of a difference in the Mo matrix from what Pu Yao had advertised and the reality. Suemo had requested a reduction in his debt. In the face of reality, Pu Yao could only admit it and reduce Suemo's debt by 1,000 third-grade jingsha. The debts of 4,000 third-grade jingsha caused Suemo to take a breath of relief. He quickly found the most effective method of using the Mo matrix. Since its ability was to increase the speed of taking in Ling energy, then he would rapidly use up the Ling energy, then quickly replenish it. If he repeated it like that, wouldn't it work? He quickly found that the Yao seed with the stalagmite fire was the perfect combination with the Mo matrix. Other than the business being average the first few days, the following days, the business was extremely hot because xianxia were coming into Dongfu from the outside to attend the Dongfu sword test conference. Suemo's processing fee was not cheap. Basically, it started from 20 pieces of third-grade jingsha. If it was something good, it would immediately jump to 40 pieces of third-grade jingsha. Yelling 200 pieces of third-grade jingsha was just him being outrageous, and he had not thought that the other would unhesitatingly agree. According to his normal income, he would take in, on average, 200 pieces of jingsha per day. According to this speed, he would quickly pay off his debts. This kind of business depended on the time. If this wasn't the time of the Dongfu sword test, just with the local Dongfu xianxia, it would have been good if he could earn 40 pieces of jingsha every day. However, he had gained quite a lot from this kind of furious labor. He managed to learn and arrange the stalagmite fire into a 3-turn fire formation which could greatly increase the effect of the fire to the point of being able to melt some 4th-grade Ling grasses. However, he did not easily take jobs involving 4th-grade materials. The main reason was the risk was too high. If he accidentally ruined someone's material, then he couldn't even pay them back. The price of fourth-grade materials, it was sky-high. This time, the other only asked him to cut the cold magnet. Zhuo felt the risk was not that high. Since the other had not even negotiated on his opening price of 200 pieces of third-grade jingsha, he felt the profit was extremely high. Speaking of sharpness, nothing was as sharp as flying swords. However, some materials could not be cut with flying swords because it would ruin the material. Cold magnet was one of those materials. There were many considerations in cutting a cold magnet. The magnetism was not evenly distributed. It was extremely complicated to try to preserve the magnetism of each piece. However, this was not too hard for Zhuo. The Yao seed seemed to have been born for embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation. Even he felt afraid at the speed of improvement in his spirit. After his consciousness became stronger, it didn't require much effort to inspect third-grade materials. It was not that easy for fourth-grade material, but if he used those spiritual tentacles, he could quickly finish it. Other than increasing his control fire, it allowed him to study the material very well, and made him much more efficient at processing it. Since it involved 200 pieces of third-grade jingsha, Zhuo was extremely careful. Each time he worked on a fourth-grade material, it was a rare experience. Closing his eyes, he inspected this middle-sized cold magnet multiple times with his spiritual tentacles. After he was completely certain of the magnet location, he opened his eyes. The black gauze hat-wearing customer only saw Zhuo holding the cold magnet and resting for a long time before suddenly opening his eyes. The cold magnet in Zhuo's hand slowly floated into the air. At the same time, a milky white flame quietly appeared, the surroundings becoming cold. Behind the black gauze, a surprised expression flashed in the eyes. Zhuo sat calmly, no expression on his face. Only that pair of eyes could make others feel his concentration. The pair of hands half resting before his chest started to move and change, stirring a string of afterimages. The stalagmite fire floating in the air turned into an extremely thin white flame thread, swimming around the cold magnet like an extremely slender white snake. Suddenly, the snaking fire thread speeded up. The black gauze hat-wearing customer felt the white fire was like lightning, circling around, the head reaching the tail. A three-turn fire formation suddenly formed. Chapter 107, Seeing Xixiang again with the three-turn fire formation forming, the temperature of the room became cold. Even the hat-wearing customer couldn't help but move back a step. The coldness exuded from the roiling fire formation seeped into the bones. Three-turn fire formation was not a complex seal formation. It could increase the power of fire seeds, regardless of if it was cold or hot fire. Each extra turn would double the power. The most Zhuo could complete right now was 3 turns. 4 times the power for him was completely enough. His eyes focused, all of Zhuo's consciousness was awakened. Even though he had a Yao core now, and his spiritual control had increased, but the difficulty of a 3-turn fire was still high for him. Using his consciousness to carefully control the stalagmite fire, he felt the Ling power inside his body disappear at an alarming speed and the exhaustion that accompanied it. Zhuo suppressed it, carefully controlling his consciousness. With a light hiss, the cold magnet fell down in 4 pieces. Zhuo released a breath. 200 pieces of third-grade jingsha. Speaking of it, a person's limits was a very scary thing. Not long ago, his yearly income was just a few dozen second-grade jingsha. In the turn of an eye, his one-time income was 200 pieces of third-grade jingsha. Just based on income, Zhuo definitely had entered the levels of high earners in Dongfu, but he had never felt that he was wealthy. Quite the opposite. He found that he seemed to have sunk into a strange cycle of lacking money more and more. He obviously was earning increasingly more jingsha, but he was eternally penniless. It was better even now, he had shoulder huge debts. However, he quickly released it. These days, what things were free? He had already gotten a cheap bargain. If there wasn't Puyao, he might not have these debts, but he would not have embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, no Yin fire bead, no stalagmite fire. He might not even have successfully entered Juji. Success. Xuemo handed the 4 pieces of cold magnet to the customer. The hat-wearing person took the cold magnet and praised, "Brothers was control of fire is truly amazing." He then crisply paid 200 pieces of 3rd-grade Jingxia. "You are too complimentary." The majority of Xuemo's attention was on the 200 pieces of 3rd-grade Jingxia, and he responded absent-mindedly. "Is Brothers were going to register for the sword test conference?" The other seemed to want to have a discussion with Xuemo. No. Xuemo didn't have the time to talk with the other. The 3-turn fire formation had almost cleaned out all of his Ling energy just now. Even though the Mo matrix was continuously strengthening his body, he still felt uncomfortable. After getting the Mo matrix, Vajra Profound Sutra had improved the fastest. In a short period of time, Xuemo had reached the 3rd level of Vajra Profound Sutra. When he channeled it, even the flesh under his skin started to have dots of gold. This was the golden flesh clothing. Vajra Profound Sutra was not a quick scripture. According to what was written, people usually had to practice for 5 or 6 years in order to reach the 3rd level of golden flesh clothing. The 4th level, red lotus flowing gold, needed 10 years. After reaching golden clothing of flesh, the defense strength rose. The entire body would be like a piece of gold, very hard to cut with a normal flying sword. Xuemo's body was much stronger than before. But for some strange reason, his physique was still thin and weak. Adding on his trademark zombie face, he was easy to recognize. The Ling power that the 3-turn fire formation had taken was too much. He desperately needed to recover now. Seeing the other did not seem to want to leave, he had to raise his head. "Do you have something else?" I'll come find Brothers Wa in a few days." The other laughed before leaving. Xuemo was too lazy to pay attention, closing his eyes to start embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation. A while later, his mind had recovered. At the side, Li Yingfeng saw his state and hurriedly yelled, "Next one." Other than Jingxia, Xuemo gained many other things. The requirements of each customer were different. The things he needed to process and make were different. On average, he would have to process around 10 strange things each day. Some were Ling grasses, some were ores, someone had even taken out a snow bear Yao gallbladder. Just Ling grasses, he had processed no less than a few hundred types these few days. His experience had grown and it would be great help for him in dan making. He celebrated making the decision before. If he was in the sect, he wouldn't have seen so many Ling grasses, much less the rarer specimens. It was a pity that the stalagmite fire was a cold fire, and could not process many things. Most of the materials he encountered were Yin and cold. What? You can't make it? If you can't make it, why are you opening shop? A man was holding a 3rd-grade fire jade, swearing. I have a cold fire. It is not suited for fire and yang materials. Xuemo said calmly. Damn, you wasted my time, you have to pay me for my losses. The other's voice suddenly stopped. He looked at Xuemo with a face full of terror, frozen to his spot, not daring to move. Xuemo serenely took back his sword essence. I'm sorry. Why don't we both pardon each other? It was not the first time something like this had happened. Xuemo was more experienced now. The man didn't say anything before leaving, crestfallen. Time was important. Xuemo could deeply feel the importance of time. An inch of light was an inch of gold, there was nothing more true than this. Fragrant fall leaves, lotus texture branch, lapis lazuli light stone, eternal river stone. After a whole day, Xuemo worked until his mind was numb. He finally couldn't persist anymore, yelling, "Everyone, come tomorrow." According to the line, Li Yingfeng gave each person a wooden card carved with a number. The lineup tomorrow would start according to the number on the card. Suemo released a breath. He really made a profit today. A gigantic order worth 200 pieces of third-grade jingsher, it was a whole day worth of work. As usual, he gave Li Yingfeng a third-grade jingsher. This was for the sect since he was borrowing the shop from the sect. After 7 or 8 days, he would be able to clear this enormous debt. That made him feel much better. Just going to rest, Suemo heard a call from behind him, "Shitty." Suemo stopped in his steps. Turning, he saw Wei Xiang standing outside the doorway to the store. "Xiang." Suemo happily ran out. Wei Xing seemed a totally different person than when he had bid farewell last time. Even though he was still wearing a short worn tunic like before, but the sharp sword essence that swarmed restlessly around his body last time had completely disappeared. Wei Xiang's appearance was average in the first place. With this attire, he didn't have any presence. His entire person seemed like an extremely normal low-level shouja. From this, it could be seen that Wei Xiang's cultivation had increased greatly. Very quickly, Suemo became even more shocked. Wei Xiang had broken through to Ningmai. His consciousness was extremely sensitive and he had fought with Changheng who had been on the verge of Ningmai, causing him to instantly detect it. How was this possible? When Xiang had gone into the sword cave, now he had successfully entered Ningmai. Suemo had thought that his own progression could be considered monstrous and that had been because Pu Yao was there. But Xiang, when Suemo had gone to the sword cave with Pu Yao before, he hadn't found anything special about it. Xiang was a true genius. Suemo had heard all kinds of praises these days and became alert now. He only had happiness in his heart. He felt that Xiang's achievement was extremely natural. If a person like Xiang was buried and unknown, then it would be strange. When did Xiang come out? Suemo asked dumbly. He suddenly thought of something. "Xiang, I entered Juji." Li Yingfeng heard the noise and ran out. Seeing Wei Xing, a happy expression came onto her face. "Xiang." Wei Xing first greeted Li Yingfeng before his eyes landed on Suemo and forthrightly laughed, "Let's go drink. Us brothers will drink until we are drunk." The night was like water, dots of starlight scattering. Wei Xing and Suemo were sitting on the rooftop, the wind blowing as they gulped down alcohol. This isn't bad. Where did Shitty get this? Wei Xing could help but take a few more mouthfuls. Suemo was already slightly tipsy. This is Wang Xiao's alcohol. Wang Xiao wanted to buy Golden Crow pills. Since Xiang came, how can there be no alcohol? I went to get some from him. Ha. This is nice. Wei Xing leaned back and swallowed. In the yard underneath, Li Yingfeng kept on shaking her head. Wei Xiang who was usually so calm, and Suemo Shitty who usually was so wooden and indifferent, once they drank alcohol, they seemed to be completely different people. Xiang managed to be in time for the sword test conference. There's so many people this year. I saw many strong people these days. Suemo slanted his eyes and drunkenly said, however, Xiang needs to beat them all, beat them into the ground. Looking at the charmingly pleasant Suemo, Wei Xing roared with laughter, yes. Beat all of them. Suemo snickered and swallowed some more alcohol. Holding the jar, he suddenly became silent. Detecting Suemo's abnormality, Wei Xing asked concernedly, "Shitty has something on your mind?" "Xiang, what do you think people live for?" Suemo asked after a beat. "What do people live for?" Wei Xing automatically straightened his spine, his eyes looking into the distance. "I do not know what other people live for. My thoughts are very simple. I want to see what this sword, when it reaches the extreme, looks like. sword at the extreme. Suemo muttered. His eyes also looked into the distance. Sitting on the rooftop, they could see the night scenery of Dongfu, the distant lights, and the barely perceptible calls. He shook his head. Before, I wanted to live better, so I studied ling farming. But now, I want to become strong. Become strong? Wei Xing turned his head and said in surprise, why? There was bitterness in Zuomo's voice, to find what I have lost and cannot forget. He didn't tell Xixiang that his features had been changed and his mind erased. If Xixiang knew, he would be furious. There was no need to make Xixiang also unhappy over his own personal matters. Wei Xing comforted him, don't rush, Shitty. You will eventually remember your past. Everyone in Wukong sword sect knew that Suemo had amnesia. Wei Xing assumed that Suemo was depressed over that today. Haha. Yes, what would come will always come. Today, it is the reunion of us brothers. I really shouldn't say such depressing things. Let's keep drinking. Suemo raised the alcohol jar and swallowed. Ha. Wei Xing also gave a wide smile and raised the alcohol jar. Drink. Chapter 108, Two Paths. Wei Xing Xixiang left Dongfu early in the morning. Suemo resumed his furious life of making jingshe. It really exceeded my expectations. You actually managed to repay all of it in such a short amount of time. Pu Yao said with slight regret. Suemo felt his entire body was light. The enormous debt had given him great pressure these past days. He asked about another problem. Pu, has there been any new developments about storing ling power? Pu Yao shrugged, nope. The rate that Suemo absorbed ling energy was multiple times faster than before, but strangely, if the ling energy that was absorbed was not quickly used, they would gradually dissipate, and could not be stored inside. For any Xiuzhe, the amount of ling power represented their cultivation. If they didn't have ling power, basically, they could not cast more than 70% of all spells. The higher the spell, the more ling power it required. He was very suspicious it was caused by the Mo matrix that Pu Yao had carved into his body. He could clearly feel the difference of progression in his cultivation after the Mo matrix was carved. He was extremely worried. Pu Yao, if I cannot store ling power, it's hard for my cultivation to increase. If my cultivation cannot increase, he wanted Pu Yao to recognize that this was a serious problem. Pu Yao was unconcerned. What does that have to do with me? I delivered the product. You Ren Yao. Suemo instantly exploded due to Pu Yao's terrible attitude and started swearing, lying to me about this Mo matrix and Yao seed. Now, you put out this disgusting demeanor of not caring. In the future, don't think about getting one piece of jingshe from Yi. I can take it myself. Pu Yao was not angry and giggled. Suemo smiled angrily, from today, Yi won't take one jingshe, only items, jade scrolls. Go take it. Yi will see where you take it from. Oh. Pu Yao rubbed his chin as he talked to himself, that is a problem. Suemo smiled coldly as he looked at Pu Yao, wanting to chop this androgynous guy into meat dross. This dross. False prophet. Greedy, dishonest, immoral, evil pervert. Pu Yao innocently spread his hands. I hadn't thought this would happen either. Things like formations, they are too complex for us Yamo. However, there isn't anything that cannot be solved in this world. I can help give you ideas. It can be free this time. Suemo suppressed the impulse to tear apart this guy, asking, keep going. Look, since the growth of your ling power is slow now, you can work from two different areas. Pu Yao's thin lips bent into a curve. One is to work at the root. Your body is like a complete formation. If one attribute has changed, then it is definitely that a part of the formation has changed. You only need to find the cause of the change to be able to correct the formation, and the cause will be resolved easily. How can I find it? Suemo had to admit that what Pu Yao said was very reasonable. I can't help you there. In any case, you have to work through seal formations. You Xiuzha are much better than us Yaomua at formations. Pu Yao said, shaking his head. After all this, he just spoke useless words. The rage inside suddenly shot up. Rather than wasting your time complaining about things that have already happened, it would be better to start studying early. Pu Yao snickered. These words instantly extinguished Suomo's rage. Pu Yao was right. Since it was like this already, then complaining about something that had already happened was just wasting time. He raised his head, and the other area? Oh, that one's much easier. Since your cultivation is growing slowly now, why don't you increase your control over Ling power? Smugness flashed through Pu Yao's eyes. If you can precisely control every strand of Ling power, the same amount of Ling power, you can use it to cast more spells. Don't envy other people for having more Jingshi, you just have to use each Jingshi on the edge of the blade. Precise control. Suemo instantly understood. When he had been in Lianqi, this had been a question that he would frequently ponder because he needed to cast, little art of cloud and rain, for many Ling fields. Just like Pu Yao had said, he needed to use every single drop of Ling power effectively. However, after he entered Juji, his life had quickly become wealthy and he had gradually lost sight of this problem. Right. Like the processing and purification you have done these days. You need to be sparse in using Ling power. Something that can be done with one strand of Ling power, you should not use two. When you can precisely control every strand of Ling power, you will find that you only need a tiny bit of Ling power to cast a spell that you used to need lots of Ling power to do. Pu Yao added, most wealthy tycoons, when they started, they were like this too. The previous length of words, Suemo had uncontrollably been enhanced and changed. Pu Yao's figure suddenly seemed much larger. But with the words he added after, he instantly shrunk back. Pu! This scum! As the victim, Suemo was seething with righteous fury. His mind, however, kept on pondering what Pu Yao had said. Li Yingfeng found that Suemo's shitty situation these past days was not normal. The speed he worked clearly had slowed down, and after each job, he would sit there in a daze. He was like a completely different person than before. Was it that he had made enough Jingshi? She couldn't help but think. Shitty should take a rest. These few days, no one was clearer than her just how much Jingshi Shitty had earned. Even now, she almost couldn't believe that this wooden and cold Shitty had such a terrifying ability to make Jingshi. The Jingshi he had made by himself was worth 5 months of the gross income for the stores she was managing. This was an extremely shocking number. If Shitty was in Ningmai, she wouldn't find it so strange. But he was only Zhuji. She had never heard of a Zhuji disciple that could earn so much. Maybe, Shitty was a genius too. Very quickly, her thought seemed to have been proven. Shitty still took business, but he did not accept Jingshi, only jade scrolls for payment. However, what she found strange was that Shitty seemed like any other jade scroll collector, accepting all kinds of jade scrolls, as long as he had never seen it before. After observing for a few days, she found that the jade scrolls that Shitty liked best were formations. Shitty was really smart. She praised silently. Their sect was a sword shio sect. The most they had were sword scriptures, and the rest were pitifully little. With Shitty's intelligence, he was suited for studying formations. It would be of great benefit to his dan-making in the future. She had a feeling that 4th Shirgu may not be able to teach Suemo Shitty anything in the future. At Suemo Shitty's age, 4th Shirgu wasn't this strong. Formations was necessary knowledge for all cultivators. It was the most basic of all basics. Dan-making, forging, jinji, all of them were connected to formations. This was something everyone knew, but even if they knew, if they didn't have the conditions, they could not learn it. Wukong sword sect was not some rich sect. Where would they get the wealth to collect these jade scrolls? She suddenly felt it a bit pitiful. If Shitty was in a large sect, he might be even stronger. Sky fragrance liquid. This is the limit of what I can process it. Suemo tiredly handed a small jade bottle to the customer. The customer hurriedly took it. Taking out the cork, an expression of joy made its way onto his face, and he praised, "Master's was spell is really amazing. Spectacular." He carefully put the jade bottle away and then bid farewell before rushing away. Suemo did not stand, but took out the jade scroll that he had just received. He couldn't help but feel slightly uplifted. To process that sky fragrance liquid, he had really done everything he could to barely process it and receive this jade scroll in payment. He did not know which sect had passed down this jade scroll. It seemed quite old. There were 3 formations inside, all of them extremely special. Pu Yao came out. He was extremely dissatisfied with Suemo's recent actions. "I told you 2 paths. You aren't following the rules." "Really?" To have tripped Pu Yao up, Suemo felt extremely good. He slowly put the jade scroll away and glanced at Pu Yao, saying, "Did we have an agreement? I am going according to what you pointed out. You told me to study formations, but you don't have any formations jade scrolls. So I have to get them myself." Pu Yao paused. He finally remembered that they really didn't have an agreement last time. He suddenly raised his head to smile. Right, he, looking at Pu Yao's dark smile, a cold feeling rose in Suemo's heart. Don't be afraid. To get one over this Ren Yao, it's worth it even if GE will suffer a bit. Suemo hurriedly comforted himself. After Pu Yao disappeared, Suemo quickly sank back into his work. In this period of time, his control of Ling power had increased quickly. After Pu Yao pointed out the problem, he started to pay attention to his technique in this area, becoming even more miserly in using Ling power to process materials. However, even though he progressed quickly, he was still unsatisfied. It was still hard to avoid wasting Ling power in unnecessary places. He quickly found the crux of the problem. To be able to perfectly use Ling power, it was impossible to achieve it just by relying on the precision of using Ling power. It also required having a deep understanding of the formations used. Only when the two were both present would the use of Ling power be most efficient. Because he only took jade scrolls in payment, Suemo's business received a bit of side effects. But the people who came to him were mostly Zhuji Xiozha of some skill. They usually would have 1 or 2 pretty good jade scrolls. Quickly, the customers knew that Suemo preferred formation jade scrolls. They would try to pick 1 or 2 quality jade scrolls. Suemo's actions were not strange. The stronger the Xiozha, especially Xiozha in non-combat professions, when their skills grew, their need for Jingshi would increasingly become smaller. These kinds of skilled craftsmen, they usually would have many weird and strange demands. Demands like jade scrolls or rare materials were actually the most common. Even though he took fewer jobs than before, but the number of jade scrolls that Suemo possessed grew at an astonishing rate. These jade scrolls came from all areas. The great majority were normal things, but there were a few of high quality. The jade scroll he had just received was one of those. Suddenly, Li Yingfeng walked to Suemo's side with a weird expression and whispered a few words to him. Chapter 109, Inky Black Lotus Seed, 3 Ningmai Xiozha have come. Li Yingfeng's words made Suemo pause. 3 Ningmai. Since Suemo had started this business, it wasn't that there wasn't Ningmai who had come. The hat-wearing person who needed the cold magnet cut last time should have been a Ningmai. Suemo loved it and hated it when Ningmai came to him. What he loved was that the payment they could give was far higher than normal people. What he hated was the things they needed him to process would be of high difficulty. High difficulty meant high risk. If it failed, Suemo could not afford to pay his debts. As to not paying, he didn't even need to think about it. The other's power was much higher than him. If a conflict happened, the one that would lose would be him. Now three had come together. Humph, a Zhuji guy dare to posture in front of us. Provoke me, I'll burn this place down. Third brother, don't speak nonsense. The voices passed clearly from the door. Clearly, the three people were starting to be dissatisfied. Suemo felt the start of a headache. He could only pass, please come in. The three people walked in. The one at the front was a red-robed male, striding confidently and projecting an aura of power. At his left was an eagle-nosed male, expression dark. It could be seen with a glance that he wasn't an easygoing person. On the right of the red-robed male was a brawny man whose face was set in a snarl. His body was like a mountain of meat. When he came in, he started to look everywhere. Greetings to Master Zhuo. The red-robed leader had a slight smile as he saluted with folded hands to Zhuo in a bow. Greetings to the three elders. Zhuo didn't dare to posture, standing and raising his folded hands to return the greeting. Seniority among Xianxia was extremely complex and hard to manage, so most of the time, everyone measured according to cultivation. Zhuo's cultivation was one stage lower than the other, so he was naturally a junior. The three seemed to be extremely satisfied with Zhuo's attitude. Even the dark face of the eagle-nosed man relaxed slightly. Master Zhuo is too courteous. The red-robed male smiled, stating his purpose, coming here, it's because we have something to ask. Following, he took out a lotus seed that was entirely black. This fourth-grade inky black lotus seed has an extremely hard outer coat and cannot be cut open by flying sword. Coming this time, it's asking Master Zhuo to take off the outer coat. We have heard about Master Zhuo's rules, and this jade scroll is a complete set of sky ring moon sound formation. This formation is the finest among fourth-grade formations and has many special attributes. We heard that Master Zhuo likes formations. This sky ring moon sound formation will be payment. But I'll say the ugly first. If you ruin it, I won't forgive you. The snarling man rumbled. Third brother, don't speak nonsense. The red-robed man reproached. He turned to say to Zhuo, Master Zhuo, don't listen to him. You just have to focus on processing it. Looking at the three, Zhuo's back had already been soaked in sweat at some unknown time. These three were all very powerful. Zhuo wouldn't be a match for even one of them. The three of them together, he wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Having climbed up from an outer sect disciple, he was very good at perception and knew that none of these three were good people. Don't see that the red-robed man spoke so friendly, but if he really ruined the inky black lotus seed, he definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Zhuo's consciousness was above other people. There was an energy of blood fiends surrounding the three. Even though it was not as terrifying as the blood fiends he saw in the Sword Cave, but they exuded an extremely faint viciousness. The three used some unknown method to disguise the energy of the blood fiends, but how could they conceal it from Zhuo's consciousness? This business was not an easy one to take. This was Zhuo's first response. He shook his head, my sincere apologies for having the three elders come here for nothing. This one is only in Zhuji, and my fire seed is only second grade. The fourth grade inky black lotus seed really is not in my abilities. His words were sincere. He was not afraid that the three would inspect his cultivation fire seed, so he was extremely honest. The red-robed man smiled slightly but did not speak. The eagle-nosed man beside him said darkly, if you can process fourth-grade cold magnet, how come you cannot do a fourth-grade lotus seed? The snarling large man widened his bell-sized eyes, unreasonably stating, I'm telling you, if you are working, you have to take it, if you are not working, you still have to take it. Otherwise, I'll tear down your little shop. The red-robed male chuckled and presented the jade scroll on his hands to Zhuo. Master Zhuo, do not refuse yet. Take a look at the formation inside this jade scroll. Finishing, he raised his head to look at Li Yingfeng, who was behind Zuemo, saying warmly, "Miss, why don't you put down the messenger seal in your sleeve? Let's not have a disagreement." Zuemo silently thought the other was good. The three, with just a few words, used all kinds of attacks. He instantly could not bear it anymore. Motioning for Li Yingfeng not to be impulsive, he bore the pressure to say, "Elder might have had mistaken information. This one had once taken a job of 4th grade cold magnet, but it was only cutting, not processing." The red-robed man's face became slightly dark, saying discontentedly, "Is master's one not giving face?" Zuemo instantly felt his body freeze, as though he was constrained by something, unable to move. At the side, Li Yingfeng's face was bloodless, staring in shock at the three. "Fine. I'll take it." Zuemo saw the situation was worsening and could only grit his teeth and agree. "Haha, Master Zhua is a smart person. Don't worry, if you can successfully process it, this jade scroll, us three people won't let Master Zhua make a loss." The red-robed male laughed as though nothing had happened. The pressure around Zuomo's body instantly decreased. Looking at this red-robed male, his heart was cold. This person looked warm but, in reality, he was vicious. If he did not successfully process it today, he would have a very bad ending. Wukong's sword sect was very far from here. If something really did happen, the Shishu from the sect won't get here in time. He didn't go to take the jade scroll, but took the inky black lotus seed. He was not concerned with the jade scroll anymore. It would be lucky if he kept his little life this time. A hint of approval made its way onto the red-robed male's face. The three moved to one side. The eagle-nosed man glanced at Li Yingfeng, his warning implicit. Zuemo did not waste words, and started to inspect this inky black lotus seed. The inky black lotus seed was the fruit of the inky black lotus flower after it bloomed. Inky black lotus was an extremely uncommon ling grass. It usually grew in extremely evil places, like the miasma-filled bogs. After accumulating and absorbing all kinds of poisons over time, its leaves were a rotten white, and the flower was as black as ink. The most valuable was the inky black lotus seed it produced. The inky black lotus would absorb all kinds of poisons that would mix inside its body and produce a new kind of poison. When the lotus produced its seed, all the strong poisons inside its body would gather in this little inky black lotus seed. The lotus seed would land in the peat and once again germinate and grow into a new lotus flower. It would continuously absorb the miasma and poison, forming a new inky black lotus seed. The grade of the inky black seed was determined by the number of cycles it went through. The inky black lotus seed in front of him was 4th grade. That meant that it had gone through 4 cycles of rebirth. That was extremely valuable and rare. The poison inside the lotus seed must be extremely strong. Holding the inky black lotus seed, Zuomo's mouth became dry. This was the first time he was processing such a poisonous ling grass. It would be false to say he was not nervous. The outer coat of the inky black lotus seed was extremely hard. It was also due to this coat, which could not be easily broken by flying swords, that the poison inside did not leak out. Otherwise, Zuomo's fingers would quickly rot and die, the poison would quickly spread and, in a short period of time, he would turn into a pile of bones. Even 3rd grade detoxification Dan could not stop the toxins of the inky black lotus seed. Also, Zuomo's detoxification Dan was only 2nd grade. Li Yingfeng usually took care of the store and naturally had heard of the infamy of the inky black lotus seed. Her face was pale, looking in nervousness at Zuemo. She had let go of the messenger seal inside her sleeve. The eagle-nosed male was staring at her all this time, not disguising the viciousness in his eyes. If she tried to rebel one bit, these people would most likely attack. A criminal that had come out of nowhere. They dared to be so brash in Dong Fu. Li Yingfeng gently bit her lips, full of worry as she looked at Zuemo Shidi. The inky black lotus seed was far out of Zhuo Mo Shidi's abilities. Last time, he had struggled to cut the 4th grade cold magnet. Processing was much harder than cutting. Even more so, it was an extremely poisonous item. If he was not careful, he would be infected by the poison and die. She noticed that sweat had soaked Shidi's back and her heart reached her throat. If Master was here. Her heart was extremely panicked. If Master could rush over, with his Jindan cultivation, that would be more than enough to deal with 3 Ningmai Shouja. Zhuo Mo had the same idea as Li Yingfeng. However, after delaying for a while, noticing the unfriendly glare of the snarling man, Zhuo Mo knew he could not delay any longer. Flipping his hand, the stalagmite fire quickly wrapped around the inky black lotus seed. The enmity in the 3 people's eyes finally faded. They were slightly nervous as they stared at Zhuo Mo, their feet unconsciously moving towards the doorway. Zhuo Mo knew that they were afraid of the poisonous nature of the inky black lotus seed. The toxicity of a 4th grade inky black lotus seed was such that even though the 3 were Ningmai, they could not easily deal with it. Zhuo Mo also wanted to throw the inky black lotus seed as far away as possible, but the situation did not permit him to do so. If he could not process this inky black lotus seed today, he might. The milky white flames surrounded the inky black lotus seed, like there was a black core inside the white fire. It looked slightly strange. Zhuo Mo steeled his heart, throwing away all his thoughts. He did not have an escape route and should not think of anything else. He focused all his consciousness. His other hand took out 5 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi, creating a formation under his body. The snarling man looked at the red-robed male. The red-robed male waved his hand. He recognized this formation. It was to replenish Ling power for Shouja. Seeing Zhuo Mo act as though he was facing a great enemy, and his movements were practiced and smooth, an expectant expression uncontrollably came over his face. Quickly putting down a 5 primary Ling replenishing formation, Zhuo Mo put down his left hand on his knees, his entire body relaxed, his eyes never wavering from the stalagmite fire. The milky white flame, spreading a pressuring cold, surrounded a pure black lotus seed as it bounced quickly. The sweat on his back dried up. After entering the mood, Zhuo Mo was not nervous anymore. There was only one thought in his head. How to process this inky black lotus seed. He quickly made a decision because he did not have too many choices. The only method he could think about right now. There was only the 4-turn fire formation that he had just barely touched. Chapter 110, 4-turn fire formation. 3-turn fire formation, that was the formation Zhuo Mo had used last time to cut the cold magnet. He hated gossip very much right now. It had clearly just been cutting the cold magnet, but it had spread to becoming processing the cold magnet and caused a calamity for him. Zhuo Mo grimaced inside. Without breaking into the stage of Ningmai, to process rare materials like cold magnet and inky black lotus seeds was like a delusion. Even with the 3-turn fire formation, he would not be able to process the 4th grade inky black lotus seed. He closed his eyes, carefully inspecting any change in the inky black lotus seed inside the stalagmite fire. He quickly was disappointed. Shrouded by the stalagmite fire, there was nothing happening on the outer coat of the inky black lotus seed. Taking a deep breath, Zhuo Mo's fingers started to flick, smoothly flowing and creating countless afterimages. For the first time, the red-robed male had a shocked expression. The public saw the spectacle, the experts the technique. This string of finger movements was not some complicated finger motions, but it was extremely quick, reaching the stage of fingers evolving into shadows. The fingers evolving into shadows referred to the fact that fast fingers would create dense afterimages, which would be so dense that they would stop for a while in the air, but since the finger movements would not have stopped, before the old afterimages would disappear, new afterimages would form, creating a series of connected afterimages. This was fingers evolving into shadows. Before reaching the stage of Jindan, finger motions were an extremely useful technique. Everyone would know it, but the skill would vary. Unless people cultivated the body, there wouldn't be much of a difference in the strength, flexibility, and power of the fingers. In other words, Ningmai Xiuzhe would have an advantage in terms of ling power but not in finger motions. Unless there were specialized techniques for finger motions, the only way to increase skill was to keep practicing. The cultivation of this zombie-like youth was extremely average, but his finger movements were amazing. Not just the red-robed male. The other two were also shocked. They exchanged a look, seeing the joy in each other's eyes. Just this string of finger movements was enough for their confidence in Zhuo Mo to increase. Zhuo Mo's mind was blank, his concentration completely gathered. In his eyes, there was only that milky white stalagmite fire, and the inky black lotus seed inside the fire. His fingers became faster. It was like an invisible hand had pushed the spitting stalagmite fire, a string of white fire flying out of the stalagmite fire. The melting ability of cold fires would increase the colder it became, the melting ability of the hot fires would become stronger the higher the temperature. The three-turn fire formation caused the coldness of the stalagmite fire to be 8 times its usual, and its melting ability had also increased by 8 times. Under the 8 times melting ability, the previously unaffected inky black lotus seed finally had a slight change. Small pits started to form on its coat. This was a sign that it was finally melting, but if it was only at this intensity, to process this inky black lotus seed, it would take years. Using the Yao seed, Zhuo Mo's consciousness was extremely cooperative. No one noticed that his body was soft and relaxed as it never had been before. The more relaxed the body, the better the effect of the Mo matrix, and the faster the rate that ling power would be absorbed. The effect of Zhuo Mo controlling his ling power in the recent period of time was extremely evident. Forming the three-turn fire formation only took half of his ling power. Feeling the ling power coming from the ling replenishing formation, Zhuo Mo released a small breath. He had never worked at the same time that he was using a ling replenishing formation. Based on what he saw, the situation was good. There was a certain level of impurities in the ling power of the Jingshi. This was not a problem for Zhuo Mo. The Mo matrix could automatically filter out the impurities from the ling power. The ling power passed on from the ling replenishing formation was a steady flow. The ling power inside Zhuo Mo's body quickly increased. He closed his eyes, maintaining the three-turn fire formation, motionless as he waited for his ling power to be replenished to capacity. In the few times he had attempted the four-turn fire formation, the use of ling power was astonishing. The red-robed male and his compatriots couldn't help but be nervous at this time as well. They could naturally see that Zhuo Mo was biding his time and gather his energy. It was like the calm before the storm. The calmer it got, the more suffocating it became. The instant that the ling power in his body reached its maximum, Zhuo Mo opened his eyes. It was like there was 1,000 catty weight on his fingers as they slowly moved. His weak shoulders shuddered in effort, but the slowly moving fingers were strangely steady. Everyone felt the white light brighten. The cage of fire became even more dense, like a white cocoon of fire. 16 threads of fire, with speeds almost undetectable by the naked eye, circled quickly around the inky black lotus seed. Four-turn fire formation. The ling power in Zhuo Mo's body furiously was used up. Just forming the four-turn fire formation, the full ling power had almost become empty. He couldn't attend to anything else but furiously start to suck in the ling power from the ling replenishing formation. Large amounts of ling power started to stream towards Zhuo Mo. He was like a thirsty traveler in the desert, greedily sucking every drop of ling power. Under the power of melting multiplied by 16, the hard coat of the inky black lotus seed finally started to melt. All of Zhuo Mo's consciousness started to furiously move. 16 times the melting power. That required that he needed to be extremely precise with his ling power. Any slack in precision, once it was multiplied by 16, could cause the fire formation to collapse. The three males Nliing Feng was so nervous they did not dare to breathe. Inside the store, there was a suffocating silence. These was no sound from the four-turn formation, but the white fire cocoon would occasionally tremble lightly. Each tremble would cause the four people's hearts to tremble. They knew that the tremble was Xuemo having problems controlling the four-turn fire formation and could not make it do as he wished easily. No one could spare the attention to this point at the moment. On their faces, other than nervousness, there was only shock. Deep shock. A Xianxia in the stage of Zhuji was actually able to start a four-turn fire formation. If it spread out, it would shake all of Dongfu, no, all of Sky Moon Jie. It was basically hard for a Zhuji to complete a three-turn fire formation. A four-turn fire formation, that was basically impossible to complete. But this extremely average-looking youth could actually form a four-turn fire formation. Looking at the dense white cocoon of fire, it was undoubtedly a four-turn fire formation. They had come when they had heard the news of the cold magnet with an attitude to try. Truthfully, when they had saw Xuemo was only in Zhuji, they had been very disappointed and still had a last hope to try, since ruining a fourth-grade inky black lotus seed was not an easy thing to do. When Xuemo had taken this job in the end, they had wondered what method Xuemo would use, but no matter what, they had never thought that Xuemo would choose the four-turn fire formation. Four-turn was not a secret formation. It was extremely common. Many people understood it. Even if they understood, there were very few that could use it. The higher the level, the more the required control over Ling power and cultivation would multiply. This kind of increase could only be broken by increases in cultivation stages. To use the three-turn fire formation as an example, if some Zhuji Xianxia occasionally managed to complete it, then they definitely could not complete a four-turn fire formation. That was because the requirement it had for control of Ling power and cultivation was double what a three-turn fire formation demanded. Only after breaking through to the stage of Ningmai would a person fulfill the requirements. Yet, something that they assumed could not happen was happening right in front of them. The white fire cocoon occasionally trembled and became unsteady, but it definitely was a four-turn fire formation. The three's eyes as they looked at Xuemo was like looking at a monster. Xuemo did not know it. Right now, he did not have a bit of attention to spare for anything. His world was only this formation. The little pits on the surface of the inky black lotus seed started to grow larger and deeper, revealing the lotus seed underneath. At this time, Xuemo did not dare to slack off even more. This was a glowing and adorable lotus seed, such a beautiful and tempting thing, but it contained terrifying poison. Just touching the tiniest bit, he would die. Suppressing the terror inside, he tried to steady his Ling power. He didn't dare to think of the consequences of the smallest mistake right now. Seeing the glowing and tender lotus seed, the three people back up even more, their expressions filled with wariness and terror. The dangers of the inky black lotus seed was infamous. He thought for a second, and then tilted his head to look at the eagle-nosed male. Do you have the gold forging chapter remnant from last time? The eagle-nosed male nodded, yes. Finishing, he took out a jade scroll from the 100 treasures pouch at his waist, passing it to the red-robed male. The red-robed male also put the gold forging chapter remnant in front of Xuemo, voice sincere as he said, the discourtesy before, I ask Master Xue to be generous and forgive us. Us brothers had accidentally came into possession of this jade scroll and it will be our apology. In the future, if we have to trouble Master Xue, please help us. This person was skilled. Xuemo thought. The other had made a beautiful move. Even though he had anger inside, but just hearing the name of the jade scroll, Xuemo knew he could not resist it. He could only grimace, as long as it's not so dangerous as today. Ha ha. Master Xue is joking. This time, it really was us that was brash. But if we were not so, we would not have seen Master's was astonishing skills. The red-robed male laughed forthrightly. Finishing, he raised his hands in a bow to bid farewell. Have a good rest, Master Zhua. We won't disturb you any longer. After the three left, Zhua Emo finally took a breath at the departure of the calamity. The left hand that was hidden in the sleeve released the seal soldier. This time, he really had enormous damage. However, looking at the two jade scrolls in front of him, he felt that it was not for nothing. Li Yingfeng, who was frightened to death, hurriedly took out a pile of Lingdan, urging Zhua Emo to go back to Wukong Mountain. This business was too dangerous. The second day, when Li Yingfeng saw Zhua Emo, who had been on his last breath yesterday, was jumping around like usual, she was dumbstruck. Shitty looked so weak. Was he just weak on the outside, strong on the inside? The internal injuries were much better than Zhua Emo had thought. The MO matrix on his body greatly aided his recovery. He had assumed that he needed to rest for half a month, and had not expected that he would be more than half healed by the second day. Of course, he was still a few days away from complete recovery. Before recovering to his best, he decided to return to the mountain. The tempers of those Ningmai Xiozha were not very good. If another Ningmai came to the door, it would be terrible. Riding Silly Bird, Zhua Emo quickly returned to his little yard. Back at Wukong Mountain, his heart finally landed. Wukong Mountain might be small, but no one dared to come to the mountain to make trouble when the sect leader and others were present. He still had a deep memory of the night that Wei Xingxiang had entered Juji and the one-sword stroke of Xi and Yan Shibua that had shocked countless people. A sect that had 4 Jindan at the same time, there were not many of those in Dongfu. It was a pity that Wei Xingxiang was not in the sect. He felt it was a pity. Finally rid of his enormous debt, and having obtained a large number of jade scrolls, for him, this was a really leisurely time. As he recovered from his injuries, he studied the jade scrolls in his possession. He had a variety of jade scrolls for all topics, but not many of them were high quality. Actually, he did not lack for jade scrolls at the moment. All the jade scrolls in the sect were open for inner sect disciples. Zhua Emo could go see Master's records room at any time. Just those jade scrolls, they would take up large amounts of Zhua Emo's time. However, the only thing the sect lacked was the formation jade scrolls that Zhua Emo needed, so he had to use this method to collect formation jade scrolls. He had gathered many jade scrolls on formations, but they were very disconnected, and not systematic. Zhua Emo was not a very picky person. Having so many jade scrolls to learn from, he was already very satisfied. In the high-quality jade scrolls, there was a sword scripture called, Blue Flower. It was extremely fine, but too and soft, suited for females. It was useless in his hands, so Zhua Emo decided to give this sword scripture to Xiao Guo. Li Yingfeng Shiji was not practicing sword scriptures now, busy every day with managing business. But when Zhua Emo ran to the eastern peak, he found out that Xiao Guo had successfully entered Juji, becoming an inner sect disciple, and also entered Shifeng Rong's branch. He hadn't thought the little girl would become his shimmy. When Zhua Emo found a mountain valley, seeing the apple-shaped wooden sign with Xiao Guo's home written on it, he instantly smiled. There were no Jinji on Xiao Guo's mountain valley. Zhua Emo easily walked in. When Xiao Guo, who had been practicing her sword, saw Zhua Emo, she first paused and then had a happy expression. Following that, she timidly said, "Xixiang. Pretty good." Zhua Emo praised. In reality, from what he saw, Xiao Guo's sword scripture was full of holes, just a pretty appearance. He gave the blue flower, sword scriptures to Xiao Guo. "Here, this is for you. You can study it." He asked a few more things and instantly understood. Master was still in seclusion, making dan, and had no time to teach her. Seeing the sweat on the apple face, Zhua Emo felt he needed to fulfill the duty of a Xixiang and started to point things out. He had practiced sword scriptures for a long time. Even though he was not as skilled as Wei Xiang, but he had comprehended 2 types of sword essences, and his eyes were much better than people like Qin Cheng. Your basics are lacking too much. When Zuoyamo said this, tears instantly flooded Xiaoguo's eyes, but she managed to not cry. Oh, in the future, you can come to my valley to practice the sword. If I have time, I can look. Zuomo's next words made Xiaoguo smile. In the little west wind yard, Zuoyamo was sunbathing, eyes closed as he leisurely sat on the chair, swaying as he pondered the jade scroll he memorized in his mind. Not far away from him, Xiaoguo silently practiced the sword, her apple face covered in sweat. On the roof, Silly Bird stood proudly, occasionally using her blue beak to arrange her snowy white feathers. Zuoyamo, having encountered a problem, had a bad mood, opened his eyes, and saw Silly Bird's smug appearance. His mood instantly worsened. Picking up a stone from the floor, he flickered his hand to throw at Silly Bird. Show off. Silly Bird gave a shriek, hurriedly flapping her wings to dodge the pebble, eyes full of disdain towards Zuoyamo. Xiaoguo was startled. When she saw Zuoyamo pointing and swearing at the blue-beaked snow goose, her large eyes became crescents. Noticing the mirth on Xiaoguo's face, Zuoyamo gave a cough. He decided to fix the impression of Xixiang and paced alongside to Xiaoguo. You cannot be distracted when practicing the sword. You have to concentrate to be able. At the side, Xiaoguo wanted to laugh but did not dare, her expression instantly becoming strange. Zuoyamo did not notice. He shook his head, mimicking Pu Yao's tone as he concluded, what is more simple than sword scripture? If you practice a few thousand times, you'll know it. Finishing, he waved his hand, keep practicing. I'm going for a walk. He then stepped out of the West Wind Valley. After Xiaoguo came every day to Zuomo's place to practice the sword, Zuomo's meals quickly increased in quality. The meat soup simmered, the Ling foods full of Ling energy that increased Zuomo's appetite. The only thing he felt irritating was that Silly Bird would partake as well each time. Especially when Silly Bird found it effective to pretend to be pitiful in front of Xiaoguo. Zuoyamo could not do anything about it. TSK, her taste certainly must be tender. Walking out of the mountain valley, Pu Yao came out. He licked his lips, looking with some yearning at the interior of the valley. Zuoyamo was used to the expression that Pu Yao had, there's lots of people that want to exterminate Yaoma on this mountain. If you aren't afraid of death, go ahead. They can't find me. Pu Yao was confident. You eat her, I don't have anything to eat, so let's both die. Zuoyamo also licked his lips. Xiaoguo's skills were really good. Won't eat her. But you can't keep me starving. Pu Yao snorted, I need souls. Didn't you say that the Yin fiends in the sword cave need time to form? Zuoyamo copied Pu Yao in shrugging his shoulders. Pu Yao once again gave a yearning expression, it should be about time today. Let's go hunt a few, and satisfy my craving. Finishing, he did not wait for Zuoyamo to speak before throwing down a few jingsha. The light flashed and Zuoyamo disappeared. Chapter 112, Yin Fiends. It was not the first time that Zuoyamo came to the sword cave, but every time that he came, he would sigh with awe. Who would have thought that inside a mountain cave, there would be such a wondrous world, a fantastical place completely different than the outside. As Pu Yao entered the sword cave, he completely disregarded Zuoyamo, going off by himself to furiously absorb Yin energy. Looking at Pu Yao's intoxicated state, Zuoyamo felt that Yao and people were really different. It wasn't easy to make a trip to the sword cave. Zuoyamo decided to make some more Yin beads. One was that this thing was worth jingsha, the second was that it was needed to make Yin fire beads. Even though he had not tested the power of the Yin fire beads, but Zuoyamo was confident in its power. Something that was so difficult to make, it wouldn't make sense if it didn't have any power. He found a place that had relatively denser yin energy and was not disturbed by Puyao before starting to form yin beads. Ever since Puyao said that all spells were formations, Xuemo started to deliberately think in that direction. However, reality was always more complex than theory. Even the simplest spell would have many changes. If the true nature of a spell was really formations, then the difficulty of finding the formation within such numerous and complex changes would be unthinkable. He quickly sunk into the world of exploration. His hands moved erratically, sometimes slow, then fast, without any rhyme or reason. There still was not any expression on his face, his eyes dazed and absent as though his mind was wandering. The yin energy gathered around his hands would suddenly gather and then spread out, or occasionally collapse. He seemed to not have detected it, his 10 fingers continuously changing like he was bespelled. Puyao opened his eyes, and noticed Xuemo's state. The yin energy that was frantically flooding towards his body suddenly paused. He closed his eyes again, the yin energy in the surroundings moving at even faster speeds towards him. The movements on Xuemo's hands slowly started to become ordered. The speed that the yin energy moved towards his hands started to increase and a yin bead started to form. When the yin bead on his hand was fully created, Xuemo's soul came back into his body. He put the yin bead he had just made in front of his eyes, and couldn't help but be disappointed. The yin bead he had made did not seem different than the yin beads he had made before. The only difference was that he was the tiniest bit faster this time. It was extremely minuscule. If Xuemo hadn't paid close attention, he wouldn't have felt anything. Even though it was an insignificant progress, but it was great motivation for Xuemo. He was slightly disappointed, but he knew that for him, studying formations was very difficult for him. At least, this meant that he was working in the right direction. As long as his direction was not wrong, if he slowly walked down this road, he would definitely improve. He had just did an extremely daring but tiny adjustment. It was this adjustment that he didn't even understand himself that had just slightly shortened the time it took for the yin bead to form. Maybe when my skill at formations is higher, it wouldn't be so difficult, Xuemo comforted himself. After this, he didn't spend time on experimenting but focused on forming yin beads. In one go, he made 30 yin beads before he stopped. Full of yin energy, Puyao's complexion seemed to be glowing, and he looked extremely satisfied. He floated next to Xuemo, go hunt a few yin fiends. He looked like an extremely greedy child wanting to eat meat. You can go hunt yourself. Xuemo asked, slightly puzzled. Puyao was much stronger than he was. There was not any reason that he was asking for help. Puyao twisted his mouth and said slightly helplessly, if I do it, the taste of the yin fiends won't be good. Really? Xuemo didn't quite believe it. Puyao shrugged his shoulders, not explaining. Xuemo pondered it. It was better not to offend this Renyao too much. He was extremely clear how much Puyao yearned for souls. Hunting yin fiends was much better than him going out and killing people for their souls. Alright, but you know my strength. Xuemo reminded Puyao. Puyao was very excited, it's enough. This crappy place, how strong of a yin fiend can it produce? TSK, if we manage to get here before your Shixiang came, there might be some good ones. Why? Xuemo asked in puzzlement. Maybe it was that Xuemo was going to work, but Puyao did not show impatience this time, and explained in great detail, yin fiends mostly originate from places with dense yin energy. They are born of yin energy, and gradually attain a basic intelligence. After continuously absorbing the yin energy in the surroundings, their intelligence would continuously increase. When they become intelligent, they would naturally have the ability to cultivate, and would continuously purify and cultivate their body. Oh, some strong yin fiends, in the end, they can cultivate to become Yao. Since they were yin fiends that cultivated into Yao, since they have natural bodies of pure yin, they are very difficult to deal with. Xuemo was slightly surprised. Difficult to deal with, it was very hard to hear something like that from Pu Yao's mouth. Pu Yao continued, however, Yin fiends, since they are born of Yin energy, they need a certain amount of time. Your Xixiang just cleaned out this sword cave. He really is a monster. He didn't leave even one behind. If it wasn't that this sword cave has blood fiends and malicious energies, in addition to Yin energy, Yin fiends wouldn't form this easily. Xuemo suddenly felt his head hurt, like a needle piercing his mind. The water-drop sword instantly became disorganized. This is the weakest of Yin fiends. It only knows one move, consciousness stab. It is as weak as it gets. Pu Yao mocked from the side, are you not able to even get this one down? Just at this time, a second consciousness stab came. Xuemo's sword instantly became a mess. His consciousness might have formed, but how to use his consciousness was a problem he had always had a headache about. He had so much spiritual power, but he didn't know how to use it. It really was a waste, to say nothing of using his consciousness to attack or defend. It seemed like someone had forcefully pierced his head twice, his head instantly in throbbing pain. But the attack of the Yin fiend was invisible and intangible. When his consciousness detected it, the other's attack would have arrived. He basically could not dodge it. Anything related to Pu Yao, it was never anything good, Xuemo wailed inside. The Yin fiend was relying on its instincts. It had been provoked by the water-drop sword. Other than the consciousness stab, it was like an infuriated beast, leaping at Xuemo. Xuemo felt the temperature of the surroundings dramatically increasing, the Yin energy almost tangible as it surrounded him as though it wanted to burrow through his pores inside his body. Xuemo felt countless needles were pricking his body. He couldn't help but howl. You're really trashy. This kind of Yin fiend, your crappy Xixiang only needs one sword blow to defeat them. Pu Yao mocked heartlessly from the side. Xuemo didn't have the attention to argue with Pu Yao now. The water-drop sword came back to his hand. This time, he did not hesitate. Using all his Ling power, he prepared to give a blow with all his power. However, he was instantly frightened. He suddenly lost control of the Ling power inside his body. The black mist which tightly enclosed his body was like a sponge, furiously absorbing the Ling power inside Xuemo's body. Why was it like this? At this rate, his Ling power would quickly be sucked dry by the Yin fiend. Consuming Ling. All Yao know how to do it. Oh, this little Yin fiend doesn't count as a Yao yet. Pu Yao's words really came at a good time, but it was full of disdain towards this Yin fiend. Xuemo heard Pu Yao's words and his heart jumped. Consuming Ling. Based on the term, it would be consuming Ling power. For some reason, he suddenly thought of Vajra Profound Sutra. At this time, he had no option but to instantly start channeling Vajra Profound Sutra. A golden light suddenly flashed inside the black mist. It was as though a layer of dark gold was layered on Xuemo's entire body. It had an effect. Xuemo clearly felt the loss of Ling power inside his body slow down. The dark golden skin was like a layer of protection, it could stop the loss of his Ling power. Chapter 113, Formation Discs, you've beaten it to this, how can I eat it? Pu Yao said in dissatisfaction. Xuemo panted, not having the energy to pay attention to him. After a while, his breaths evened. Thinking about the danger that had just passed, he suddenly erupted, you damned Ren Yao. Why didn't you tell me before that Yin fiends could attack? Pu Yao's face was matter-of-fact, I thought you knew. Such a simple thing, you should know that. Silly Yao, you aren't seeing the situation clearly. Xuemo smirked, such a simple thing, Ge doesn't want to lower myself to do it. You can do it yourself. Finishing, he turned to leave. Pu Yao was dumbstruck. Silly Yao. Fighting with Ge, I'll let you know how to die. Suemo raged inside, his anger remaining. This is a misunderstanding. Pu Yao caught up and said solemnly, actually, I wanted to teach you how to deal with fiends, but you know, this needs you to personally experience it so you have a better impression. Suemo didn't pay attention to him. Pu Yao glanced at him, and kept on speaking, look, with your power, it doesn't take much energy to destroy fiends that have just formed. But do you have any way of injuring them but not destroying them? Suemo didn't even blink an eyelid. Why do I have to injure them but not destroy them? Pu Yao said sternly, oh, it is not right to think that way. For example, your master told you to capture a Yao beast, alive. What will you do? You make medicine as well, and you should know that many Yao beast material need alive beasts to be effective. Suemo still didn't pay attention to him. However, taking into account your present cultivation, it was pretty good that you managed to destroy it. But you cannot stay forever in Wukong Mountain, and Sky Moon Jia. Oh, you still have to go find your identity in history. Suemo's steps stopped. He rudely interrupted Pu Yao, Pu, what do you really want to say? Pu shrugged his shoulders, I just want to teach you some methods of dealing with similar situations. What methods? Suemo asked. There are many. Pu Yao rubbed his chin, but with your present power, the best methods is formations. Formations? Suemo first paused and then some interest rose. Formations, how to use formations. The enemy will let me set up a formation. Smugness rose in Pu Yao's bloody pupil and then disappeared. Your understanding of formations is still too shallow. I have seen strong Shouja. Their minds would just move and they could make a big formation. They have endless tricks. I once encountered a sword Xiu. He had 12 flying swords, and he could set up a powerful formation in the blink of an eye, extremely strong. Suemo was slightly disappointed, you're just wasting your words. Recently, he had been studying formations, but he had just started. He needed a lot of time to set up a slightly complex formation, much less using his mind to set up a large formation. It seems your basic knowledge is too weak. Pu Yao was not gentle in mocking Suemo. He continued, there is something called formation discs in this world. Formation discs. Suemo paused and then became joyous, you know how to make formation discs. Many of the formation jade scrolls he had gathered would mention the thing called formation discs, but not one of the jade scrolls mentioned how to make formation discs. He had planned on searching in Dong Fu to see if he could buy a jade scroll about formation discs. However, after the incident with the inky black lotus seed occurred, he didn't have time to go search before he sneaked back to the mountain. I don't have any interest in trash like formation discs. Pu Yao's words were like a bucket of cold water poured over his head. Suemo's heart that had just heated slightly instantly cooled down. He looked in extreme dissatisfaction at Pu Yao. Pu Yao shrugged, even though I don't understand, but I know where to find the instructions. Where? Suemo couldn't help but ask. Oh, I feel we need to make an agreement. Pu Yao said slowly. Suemo first stilled and then understood what Pu Yao meant. He asked, what agreement? I'll tell you where it is. You need to give me 50 fiends, alive. Pu Yao's bright red tongue licked his lips, extremely alluring. Okay. Suemo agreed without any hesitations. Your sex records room has it. Pu Yao smirked at Suemo. Suemo was speechless. The records room of Wukong's sword sect was open to all inner sect disciples and did not require any contribution points. When the sect leader had announced this, Suemo had been suspicious that he had heard it wrong. He felt none of the elders were charitable people, so why would they announce such a strange rule? However, Suemo definitely approved of it. The only shortcoming was that the sect primarily focused on sword scriptures and had pitiful amounts of other jade scrolls. There were very few that were good ones. This was also why Suemo hadn't thought of the sect's records room in the first place. Sui Mo suddenly stopped in his steps. He saw a familiar figure. Luo Li Shixiang. Wasn't he in seclusion? Sui Mo was slightly surprised. He looked a few more times. Luo Li Shixiang seemed engrossed in his reading, and hadn't noticed his arrival at all. Sui Mo didn't have any good feelings for Luo Li Shixiang. The conflict between the two of them basically could not be resolved. Sui Mo didn't want to have a conflict happen in the records room, so he lightened his steps and started searching in the records room. He quickly found the jade scroll on formation discs and was overjoyed. Pu Yao hadn't lied to him. Holding the jade scroll, Sui Mo quickly sunk into the world of the jade scroll, completely forgetting the passage of time. Formation discs was putting already prepared formations inside a jade disc so that when it was needed, it could quickly be released. It was an extremely practical technique. The majority of formations could be made into formation discs for easy use. However, the power of formation discs was slightly weaker than the formations that were set up using talismans, so it was preferred by low-level Xiuzhe below Jindan. In all the Xiuzhe, the ones skilled in using formation discs were roaming Xiu. Sui Mo found that he seemed to be extremely similar to roaming Xiu. The spells that he had primarily focused on in the area of Ling farming were also one of the areas roaming Xiu were skilled in. The difficulty of creating formation discs was directly related to the difficulty of the formation. It had to be said that Sui Mo's days which he spent in Dong Fu processing all kinds of materials had given him large amounts of experience. Under his attentive studying, he gradually learned how to make formation discs. Before this, he studied formations because he wanted to increase his skill at forging and dan-making. He had never thought about using formations against enemies. Only when he started learning how to make formation discs did he find that formations could be used against enemies. When he left the records room, the sky was already dark. Luo Li Shixiang had disappeared. Sui Mo guessed that he had left. Returning to the little west wind yard, Xiaogua had already left. Only Silly Bird was standing on the rooftop, untiringly preening her own feathers again and again. Finding a jade board in the room, Sui Mo gathered his mind to think and started to create his first formation disc. He cut out a piece of jade that was palm-sized and the thickness of a finger. There was no need to wonder about the shape of the formation disc. Sui Mo used the water drop sword to cut it into a rough circular shape. The important part was to seal the formation into the jade disc. What formation should he seal? Since it was his first try, Sui Mo decided to pick a formation of little difficulty, 3-talent water formation. The only purpose of this formation was to greatly increase the water content inside a certain area to increase the power of water element spells. There were many things that had to be taken care of when setting up a formation, and the most important one of them was the formation talisman. The formation talisman was just a talisman that could act as the intermediary for the formation. Some Xiuzhe would create some little flags and use them to make the formation. Others would make a beaded bracelet for the formation. The Xiuzhe were different, and the formation talismans that could be used were endless and varied. However, if they were formation talismans, they would have some similarities, such as number. The more powerful the formation, the more complex it usually was, and the more formation talismans was needed to create the formation. Chapter 114, Sword Test Conference. When Sui Mo hurried to Wukong Hall, he was surprised to find Luo Li Shixiang was also there. He bowed to the sect leader seated at the front before standing to one side. Scanning the surroundings, he saw the other Shibua and master had not come. There was only the three of them in Wukong Hall. Luo Li, Sui Mo, you two need to prepare. 1 month later, you and your Wei Xing Shixiang will represent our sect at Dong Fu Sword Test Conference. You have to cultivate well, and not slack off. The sect leader concisely announced this news. The status of Wei Xing as eldest Xixiang had become unshakable after he came out of the sword cave. Supposedly, the sect leader had announced it on the spot. Luo Li did not say a word, just bowed. Sui Mo, who did not have any mental preparations, was dumb on his spot. Sword Test Conference. He was going to attend the Sword Test Conference. After a while, he regained his focus and said, panicked, "Sect leader, isn't this a bit inappropriate?" "How is it inappropriate?" Pei Yuanran hadn't thought that Sui Mo would say it was inappropriate. Seeing the sect leader's gaze land on him, Sui Mo could only keep going. This disciple might not be able to take the duty. It is enough for our sect to have Wei Xing Xixiang and Luo Li Xixiang. This disciple's power is weak. Before he even finished, even Luo Li's eyes as they looked at him were slightly strange. Pei Yuanran chuckled, "Haha. You don't look anything like your scalping zombie nickname." He narrowed his eyes slightly, and said warmly, "The reputation of the sect, when it's time to use it, it should naturally be used well. However, when the sect needs your service, you cannot retreat." Sui Mo's heart dropped. It was over. The sect leader definitely knew that he had gone to Ling Ying's sect. The sect leader's warm gaze right now was like a knife. Sui Mo felt extremely uncomfortable, the words that had reached his mouth shrinking back. He hurriedly said, "Yes, yes, yes." This disciple was muddle-minded. To earn honor for the sect, it is the duty of our generation. This disciple will extinguish volcanoes and upset seas if necessary. The sect leader laughed, "We don't need you to go through anything. Just try at the competition. It will be good for you personally." Sui Mo instantly was embarrassed. It was lucky that there was no expression on his face and nothing could be seen. The reason that he didn't want to attend the sword test conference was that he didn't want to divide his attention. He suddenly asked curiously, "Sect leader, hasn't the sword test conference been going on for a while?" Disciple had thought it was going to finish soon. Haha, the local sects would always have a few slots. You can directly attend the sword test conference, and do not have to start from the preliminary sword test conference. Alright, if you have any more questions, you can ask your Liying Feng Shiji. I have put her in charge of the logistics for this conference. Pei Yuanran waved his hands, signaling for the two to leave. From beginning to end, Luo Li did not say a word, standing there like a block of wood. Sui Mo didn't exchange pleasantries with him and they left on their own paths. Walking to the West Wind Valley, Sui Mo still hadn't managed to react yet. He had never thought about attending the sword test conference. Even though he was tempted of the prizes, but he knew how much he was really worth. He had heard things when he had been processing materials in Dongfu. Supposedly, this sword test conference was the biggest Sky Moon Jia ever held, and had the highest attendance in history. He might have been bold and victorious at Ling Ying's sect, and gotten a lot of gains, but there was a lot of luck involved. In the many young disciples of Sky Moon Jia, the first-class ones were those young people who had already reached the stage of Ningmai, like Wei Xing Xixiang. Ningmai was like a doorway. If they could not step over it before 30 years old, they wouldn't make any great achievements. Sui Mo was full of confidence in Wei Xing Xixiang, but placed in the context of the entire Sky Moon Jia, this confidence would have to discount it. Dongfu was just one of the 13 primary towns of Sky Moon Jia, and there were countless families of various sizes spread out across the wild. In Sky Moon Jia, other sects of various sizes, the next numerous group were all kinds of families. These families had generations of cultivators, and there were not many differences compared to sects, except that they were even more traditional and conservative. They did not accept Xiuzhe from the outside. Compared to sects, the resources that the families had were much less, and they were less scriptures and spells. However, they had their own method of surviving. They might not have many spells, but after being refined and corrected by generations of disciples, as long as it had managed to pass down, it would have its unique traits. The disciples that came from sects, they would have stronger foundations in areas. The disciples that came from families, they would always have one or two spectacular spells. Each had their specialties. If a talented disciple came out of a cultivation family, the tilt and the resources would be even greater than a sect. So many powerful experts, with his Juji cultivation, what would he do there? Suemo twisted his mouth. In reality, even Luo Li Shixiang didn't have a hope in his eyes. If someone had a chance from the sect, it would only be Wei Shixiang. When he thought of Wei Shixiang, Suemo couldn't help but feel expectant. Shixiang, who had killed his way step by step in the cave, and broken through to the stage of Ningmai, what kind of display would he put up? This was the only part of the sword test conference that Suemo was interested in. The Yin fiends in the sword cave had all been wiped out by Shixiang. Even, Pu Yao, when speak of Shixiang, would occasionally show hints of praise. Okay, since he was just going there to show his face, Suemo decided, of course, he would display his effort to avoid being punished by the sect leader. Suemo then decided to throw the problem to one side and keep doing what he was doing. In the little yard, Xiaoguo was still practicing the sword, sweating heavily, extremely focused. Suemo did not disturb her, only standing and looking silently from the side. After a short while, he nodded. Xiaoguo had improved very quickly, and the blue flower, sword scripture had formed. In reality, Xiaoguo's talents in the sword could only count as average. Suemo had only taught her to fulfill the duty of a Shixiang. But as Xiaoguo continuously improved, especially the effort that almost surpassed Suemo's imagination, his attitude started to gradually change and he taught more seriously. Blue flower, sword scripture, killing intent hidden within the gentleness. The navy sword light was sometimes thin and dense, layers of circles like the fine brush paintings, sometimes the sword leapt like the crazed ink writing. Presently, Xiaoguo's blue flower still lacked killing intent, but on soft, yin, and entangling, it was exceptional. What Suemo felt astounded by was the tenacity that was barely perceivable in her sword presence. She was like a timid and silent spider hiding in the white porcelain vase, spitting out countless thin navy strands, quietly forming a dense and strong blue net, trapping her opponent. This, blue flower, was really suited for her. Suemo praised inside and felt happy for her. In the future, Xiaoguo definitely could become a pretty strong sword shio. There was another transformation in blue flower, drawing essence. Suemo felt that he couldn't demand so much. This thing was related to one's personality. Xiaoguo wasn't that kind of forthright and lively person. He guessed it would be hard for her to comprehend that level of sword essence. Suemo wasn't a person stuck on transformations. He felt that if Xiaoguo kept developing like this, she would definitely carve out a road for herself. Thinking about it, Suemo gathered all the jade scrolls that he felt could give Xiaoguo help. Most of them were yin and soft sword scriptures. At this time, Xiaoguo had completed one round of practice. When she raised her head and saw Suemo watching on from the side, she timidly said, "Shixiang, oh." Suemo responded. He took out a few jade scrolls out of his 100 treasures pouch to give to Xiaoguo. "Take this and have a look. Don't just practice, take a look at other things, learn some knowledge, it can be inspiration for you." Seeing mist rise in Xiaoguo's eyes, Suemo instantly had a headache. He hurriedly stuffed the jade scrolls into Xiaoguo's hands, and said in a deliberately stern tone, "This is homework. I will inspect it. Don't slack off. Keep practicing." Finishing, he fled, heading towards his house. Everything about this little girl was good, except she liked crying too much. Suemo shook his head. He could do nothing for Xiaoguo there. Oh, she can practice by herself since she had been pretty good right now. Suemo said extremely irresponsibly. He quickly threw the question to one side, and started his daily cultivation. His cultivation was extremely unequal right now. The great majority of his time was on scriptures. Both, embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, and, Vajra profound sutra, needed large amounts of time. In comparison, the time he spent on spells was lamentable. Due to not having the next section on the 5-element spells of Ling plant farmers, he could only work on the finger motions to stop them from becoming unfamiliar. Li Water Sword Scripture, after he merged the sword essences, he found that he had greatly diverged from the contents of the Jade Scrolls. The content in the Jade Scrolls was not suited to the newly hybrid sword essence. The problem was while it was hard to merge together the sword essences, it was even harder to split them apart again. The only thing Xuemo felt happy about was the new sword essence was much more powerful than before. The remaining time was on the spells for dan-making and forging. Shi Fengrong felt that she didn't have time to teach him dan-making, so she let him read all the Jade Scrolls relating to dan-making. She had even wiped away the Jinji on the Jade Scrolls that required an appropriate cultivation for Xuemo to read. It had to be said that this was very beneficial for Xuemo. His control over the stalagmite fire was much stronger than before. He could comprehend many of the intricacies. Even though he could not understand many parts due to his cultivation, but his thinking and knowledge was far above the past. In the area of forging, he could only be considered to be dabbling. The only thing he was good at was processing materials. Other things, he was extremely weak. However, he felt that forging was a pretty good direction, especially when he had a fire seed. When he had free time, he would flip through Second Sherbua's Jade Scrolls on forging. From this, it could be seen just how little spells he had. However, he didn't have any better methods. He definitely couldn't talk about it with sect leader and the Sherbua, otherwise, he would be lectured. The elders would certainly sternly lecture him to practice the sword, and not bite off more than he can chew. One sword breaks all moves was the confidence of sword shio experts. It was a pity that Xuemo was not an expert and did not have much time recently to put on the sword. He was a pure pragmatist. His development was completely due to needs and motivations. After he had nearly tripped up at Lingying's sect, he had become highly alert that he could not do it again. Earning Jingshi, it was better to be safe and steady. Before, he had spent large amounts of time on formations, but since he had been lacking for effective methods, he had studied, but didn't have great interest. But now that he had the formation discs, this had undoubtedly opened a window for Xuemo. On the other side of the window was a completely new world. Chapter 115, Exploring the Sword Cave. Again Xuemo opened his eyes, the dark gold covering his entire body slowly fading. If one was to peel away Xuemo's skin, they would see that the flesh under the skin would appear have countless slivers of gold embedded in it. The third level of Vajra Profound Sutra, Golden Clothing of Flesh, became deeper each day. The Mo matrix seemed to have the greatest pairing with Vajra Profound Sutra. Even Xuemo was shocked at the progression speed of Vajra Profound Sutra. Originally, he had assumed that the gravestone version of Vajra Profound Sutra would be slow and steady. Who knew that with the addition of a Mo matrix, it dramatically transformed. Based on this speed, he would soon reach the fourth level of Red Lotus Flowing Gold. It was a pity that other than body cultivation, Xuemo didn't know how to use it. Even though his body was golden clothing of flesh and was not easily injured by normal flying sword. But the sorry state he was in when he had encountered the Yin fiends last time made him understand that even though his body could not be destroyed, he could do nothing against spiritual attacks. Xuemo felt he was a complete tragedy. He had a gigantic consciousness but didn't know how to use it. He had cultivated his body to golden clothing of flesh, but similarly, he didn't know how to use it. He knew the attributes of countless materials, but could not forge an acceptable talisman. The only thing he felt fortunate about was that he knew how to make formations discs now. He could now use the formations he had learned. Pu Yao, who had become impatient long ago, nagged, "Start working. Start working." He didn't wait for Zhuemo to speak up. Throwing out the Jingshi, a blur of light, and one person and one Yao disappeared from their spots. We agreed. 50 seriously injured fiends, Pu Yao emphasized, alive. I know, Zhuemo was extremely conscious that he had to pay what he owed. Even more, he owed Pu Yao. It wasn't easy to take advantage of Pu Yao. These past few days, he had made large amounts of all kinds of formation discs and wanted to try their abilities. There's one there, Pu Yao instantly became excited as he floated towards one corner. Zhuemo followed in a hurry. As expected, a fiend was silently floating in the corner. Zhuemo noticed the mist around the body of this fiend was denser than last time. What's this? It looks harder to deal with than last time, he asked Pu Yao. Pu Yao stared fixedly at this fiend with his eyes bright. The only thing lacking was him drooling. Without turning his head he said, "What place is this?" The fiends absorbed energy every day. It's natural that they grow quickly. Zhuemo muttered and responded, so that was why. This fiend was stronger than the last one. It quickly found Zhuemo, gave a dissonant sound, and then leapt at Zhuemo. At the same time a consciousness stab came. However, Zhuemo was prepared the time. With a snicker he flipped his hand, and he lightly threw out a formation disc. The formation disc was like it was thrown into the water. The air vibrated and the formation disc disappeared. The air next to Zhuemo's ears shook. The consciousness stab brushed past him. His heart was joyful. The formation was already effective. The fiend that had traveled not far away from Zhuemo suddenly stopped in its place, seemingly confused. Due to desiring to see the effect of the formation, Zhuemo wasn't in a hurry to attack and circled around the fiend. The fiend inside the formation didn't respond at all, and was just turning in circles. As expected, joy could barely be disguised in Zhuemo's eyes. I hadn't guessed wrong. Pu Yao had told him the requirements for fiends to form. Adding on the attack of the consciousness stabs that the fiend had used last time, Zhuemo had deduced that fiends were vulnerable to illusory formations. Fiends were born from energies. Even though they knew how to use consciousness stabs, however their intelligence was low and were easily prey to illusory formations. The formation he threw out was called Path Confusion Formation. It was one of the simplest illusory formations. Its effect was to make others lose track of their position. Due to the limited materials, Zhuemo was not able to create a more complex path confusion formation. In real battles, a second-grade path confusion formation wouldn't be very effective. It basically was not effective against any Xiuzhi above the stage of Zhuji. Even more so, the path confusion formation released by the formation disc was less powerful. However, this little and mostly useless path confusion formation successfully trapped a fiend. In an instant, Zhuemo's heart was filled with the feeling of accomplishment. After Pu Yao had said that if he could not increase the storage of Ling power, then he should decrease the use of Ling power to increase the efficiency of Ling power, it had given him great inspiration. What he understood and was skilled at were all low-level spells. Right now, the improvement in his cultivation was extremely slow, and those high-level spells and formations all had high demands on Ling power. He had been disappointed for a long time, but the Mo matrix and Yao seed could not be removed. He could not solve the problem of storing Ling power, that meant he was destined to work with only low-level spells. Without any other method, he could only rely on these low-level spells and formations. He had a feeling, if he could use them well, low-level spells and formations could also release a significant power. Reality proved that he was correct. As long as the direction was right, a second-grade formation could trap a fiend. It was great motivation that he had been right. This caused him to completely forget Pu Yao. All of his attention was on the trapped fiend. He wanted to see how long this path confusion formation that was not even second grade could trap this fiend. This Yin fiend, what counterattack would it have? Seeing Zhuo Mo not moving, Pu Yao was slightly dissatisfied, but he suppressed it. He also wanted to see what Zhuo Mo wanted to do. The Yin fiend inside the formation gradually became irritable. It could be seen from the boiling Yin energy around it. From the time it had been trapped, the Yin fiend had released 5 consciousness stabs, all of them failing to hit anything, and in all directions. This was evidence that the Yin fiend had completely lost its sense of direction. Squeak! The Yin fiend suddenly gave an extremely piercing yell, and from the restless Yin energy, there were 5 gray thin splinters that suddenly shot out. Bam! A light sound, and the path confusion formation instantly broke. The 5 gray splinters were not hampered and continued to travel in their path. Zhuo Mo's expression changed slightly. One of the gray splinters was shooting towards him. Hurriedly casting a spell, the Moonwater Black Turtle Armor's formation started up. A semi-clear turtle shell shield appeared in front of him. Pew! The turtle shield shook, the light fading, but it managed to stop it. Zhuo Mo was shocked. This gray splinter was this powerful. He was extremely clear just how strong the turtle shell defense that the Moonwater Black Turtle Armor put out. It had almost been broken. If that had landed on his body, it definitely would have left a bloody hole. Gritting his teeth, another formation disc appeared on his hand, Dragon Tying Formation. When the formation disc left his hand, it turned to 3 thin blue chains, and headed for the Yin fiend. The 5 gray splinters seemed to have been harmful to the Yin fiend as well. It was drooping at its spot, unable to dodge in time. The 3 blue chains were like 3 blue snakes, securely tying it up. Speaking of it, it was strange. This Yin fiend was completely made up of Yin energy, but these blue chains could tie it like it was tangible, tying it so that it could not move. Only now did Zhuo Mo release a breath. This, Dragon Tying Formation, was one of the fine formations in the Jade Scrolls that he had earned. To make this Dragon Tying Formation, he had used up a lot of materials. This was one of the biggest insurances he had this time. He hadn't thought he would use it so early. Do you need me to help? Zhuo Mo calmed down and turned to ask Pu Yao. No need, Pu Yao licked the corner of his mouth and walked towards the Yin fiend that was tied up. The Yin fiend seemed to be extremely terrified of Pu Yao, furiously squeaking. Pu Yao was not moved. Walking in front of the Yin fiend, he reached with his hand into the Yin energy. There didn't seem to be any movement, but the squeaks of the Yin fiend gradually became smaller. The gray Yin energy covering the body of the Yin fiend was sucked into Pu Yao's palm at a speed visible to the naked eye. Pu Yao revealed an intoxicated expression, so long since I tasted something this delicious. In the blink of an eye, he had sucked the Yin fiend dry. The 3 blue chains vanished into the air without a support. Oh, there's still 49 more. There seemed to be a new glow on Pu Yao's face, the smile at the corner of his mouth even more enchanting. Luckily, Zhuo Mo had prepared large amounts of formation discs for this trip to the Sword Cave. The Dragon Tying Formation was just one of them. Gradually, Zhuo Mo became familiar with the specialties of the Yin fiends. The gray splinters was the last life-saving move of the Yin fiends. After they used it, they would shrink and become weak. The illusory formations were 100% successful against the Yin fiends. Zhuo Mo had to sigh that it was wondrous how things in the world would have their weaknesses. As Zhuo Mo became familiar with the Yin fiends, his moves became much more skilled. He spent more time now examining how the Yin fiends used the consciousness. Yin fiends were extremely primitive and crude in their use of consciousness, but to Zhuo Mo who didn't know how to use his consciousness at all, it was an extremely valuable experience. When he encountered the 10th Yin fiend, Zhuo Mo could form a consciousness stab after trying a few times to condense the Yin energy into needles. Zhuo Mo could skillfully use it after practicing a few times, but he was not very satisfied with the power. This move could be used as an ambush, but if the other person was prepared, it basically didn't have any use. The first time, Zhuemo had been unprepared and that had caused his sorry state. Pu Yao expressed his usual disdain and mockery. Zhuemo then put his attention on the gray splinters the Yin fiends released because he found the gray splinters were much stronger than the consciousness stab. Every time, he would push the Yin fiend to the limit to get the Yin fiend to release the gray splinter for him to inspect. His consciousness was much stronger and larger than the Yin fiend. After repeated inspections, he finally understood the gist. The center of the gray splinter was consciousness, and the outer layer was a dense skin of Yin energy. The gray splinter was much more skilled than the consciousness stab. It would use less spiritual power than the consciousness stab, but the consciousness stab couldn't compare to it in power. Pu Yao's mood was extremely good. He had ate more than 10 Yin fiends in a row. There was an additional glow on his face, even the red pupil and the red crystal on his ears became bright and luminous. In opposition to Pu Yao, Zhuemo's mood was terrible. He spent so much effort to understand what the gray splinter was, but he could not use it. Was there anything that would make someone more depressed? He felt it was not very hard to control his consciousness, but he wasn't a Yin fiend. Where would he get such dense and pure Yin energy? The gray splinters must include Yin energy for them to be used. Without the available materials, without Yin energy, Zhuemo couldn't do it. Wait! Zhuemo, who had been following with his head down beside Pu Yao, suddenly felt a light flash across his mind. His feet couldn't help but stop. Floating at the front, Pu Yao was slightly surprised. He also stopped and looked back in slight puzzlement. He coincidentally saw Zhuemo's raised eyes, and the glee that could not be disguised. Chapter 116, Yin Splinters. Zhuemo thought of the Yin beads. Aren't the Yin beads made of Yin energy? The Yin energy in the Yin beads was even more condensed than the Yin energy of the Yin fiends. Zhuemo became more excited the more he thought about it. He took out a Yin bead and started to study it. Consciousness was extremely sensitive to other consciousness. When Zhuemo inspected it before, he had clearly understood the consciousness inside the gray Yin splinter. However, the Yin bead was different than the Yin energy surrounding the Yin fiend. The condensation of the Yin energy in the Yin bead far surpassed the Yin energy surrounding the Yin fiend. He still needed to slowly figure out how to use his consciousness. He referred to this gray splinter as Yin splinter. Zhuemo sunk into his thoughts. He wasn't afraid of finding things out. What he was afraid of was not finding a direction. Now that he found a direction, he was halfway there. Pu Yao curiously looked at Zhuemo thoughtfully as he silently floated forward. Zhuemo unconsciously followed him. Zhuemo didn't notice that the road under his feet was heading down. A dark smile came onto the corner of Pu Yao's mouth. Squeak! Zhuemo was suddenly shaken and was frightened out of his thoughts. He raised his head and saw a Yin fiend heading towards him. He was familiar with the routine and did not panic. He threw out a formation disc with path confusion formation inscribed in it. It was easy to make a path confusion formation, and it didn't need much in terms of quality of the materials. So Zhuemo had made more of them than anything else. The 100 treasure pouch at his waist was extremely heavy, completely filled with all kinds of low-level formation discs. If it wasn't that his Vajra Profound Sutra had reached the level of golden flesh clothing, and his strength had improved, just the formation discs would be enough to crush him. As expected, the Yin fiend stopped in its steps. But quickly, the Yin fiend surprised Zhuemo greatly. The Yin energy surrounding the Yin fiend moved restlessly and 3 gray Yin splinters suddenly shot into the surroundings. The path confusion formation that had just formed was like a wet piece of paper and was torn to pieces. Only now did Zhuemo notice the Yin energy surrounding this Yin fiend was thicker than the previous Yin fiends. As the Yin energy was extremely condensed, the gray Yin energy looked black. Damn it! This Yin fiend wasn't a normal one. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that Pu Yao had retreated to one side, a smirk on his face. Zuo didn't have to think to know that it was Pu Yao's fault. But there was no time to think about it now. After this Yin fiend shot out 3 Yin splinters, it actually was not affected. It was completely immune to the weakening that the other Yin fiends had when they shot out Yin splinters. Zuo couldn't help but have a bad feeling. There was only things like path confusion formations left in the 100 treasures pouch. He had completely used up the good formation discs like the dragon tying formation. Responding panically, Zuo barely managed to dodge the Yin fiend. The cold wind stirred by the Yin fiend brushing past made his hair stand on end. Before he could distance himself, shoo shoo shoo, 3 Yin splinters suddenly shot out of the Yin fiend. Too close. Unable to dodge in time, Zuo could only start up the turtle shell shield of the moonwater black turtle armor. Pew! The hard turtle shield was like a fragile bubble, dying at the same time as one of the Yin splinters. The other 2 Yin splinters directly headed for his face and vital areas. Zuo's soul fled. At the time of life and death, he focused all his attention, all his Ling power was channeled, all of his consciousness was furiously moving. He didn't have the time to summon his flying sword. Didn't have the time to take out the seal soldier. Didn't have the time to take out the Yin fire bead. Right now, 3 was only one thing he could use, Vajra Profound Sutra. Hi! Zuo shouted. Golden light flashed across his entire body and then suddenly dimmed. The light came fast and left even faster, as though it flashed by. After the golden light, Zuo's entire body seemed to be made from dark gold. His eyes were widened angrily, but there was no expression on his face. He seemed like the Vajrapani coming down to the earth, angry yet indifferent. Without any attention to spare, Zuo reached out with his 2 dark gold palms, swiping at the 2 Yin splinters. What one would find strange was that his hands moved extremely slowly, but a feeling of pressure formed. The formation on the vambraces, 1000 kadi. At the same time, the 3rd grade wind travel boots silently glowed. Zuo's hands caught the Yin splinters. Slap slap. 2 clear explosions. The Yin splinters seemed to have been hammered, exploding into Yin energy, and spreading out. Zuo didn't end up well either, his hands trembling, his fingers in heart-rending pain. The Vajra Profound Sutra, in his body almost collapsed, but he knew this was not the time to take a break and gritted his teeth to persist. The 3rd grade wind travel boots lit up. Wind travel, and movement, both started. Zuo was like a ghost. After a string of turns, he distanced himself from the Yin fiend. Panting heavily, Zuo stared fixedly at the Yin fiend in front of him. The dangerous changes that had just occurred frightened him. He didn't even know how he managed to get through it. His heart was beating hard like a heavy drum. He had been too nervous before, and there hadn't been time for him to be afraid. Now that he had the attention to spare, he had enormous fear, and terror once again took over his body. Such a strong Yin fiend. The Yin fiend seemed to have detected Zuo's power. This time, it didn't charge at him, and maintained the standoff with Zuo. The Yin energy that had been moving around its body stopped, motionless. Zuo didn't dare to slack off now. The Yin fiend in front of his eyes was like a fully drawn bow. Just the slightest bit of outside force would cause it to attack. Zuo's hand touched the water drop sword, the terror inside instantly decreasing by a lot. His heart slowly resumed calm. He suddenly understood a little bit the meaning of the flying sword for sword shio. However, this was not the time to think about those things. He needed to first kill of this damned Yin fiend in front of him. With his flying sword in hand, Zuo's confidence instantly rose. He didn't hesitate, and didn't hold anything back as he attacked. 7 whirlpools. 7 whirlpools was made up of countless sword energies and securely surrounded the Yin Fiend. The cold energy brimming as the sword energies crisscrossed. The Yin Fiend that had been preparing started its attack. Inside the Yin energy it had condensed, a circle of Yin splinters shot out at the surroundings with it at the center like a gray flower blooming. The Yin splinters and 7 whirlpools smashed into each other. Bam bam bam. A string of explosions sounded like fireworks lit up, ringing in the ears. The 7 sword energies whirlpools were destroyed in an instant, but after the whirlpools that had been made up of those sword energy was torn apart, the power actually increased instead. After the 7 sword energy whirlpools broke, the area that they surrounded instantly turned into a mess, extremely disordered and chaotic. In the chaos, countless pieces made out of sword energies flew up and down like countless blades, furiously cutting and slicing. The pitiful Yin Fiend was in the center of the chaos and instantly was cut by the countless sword energies. Suemo was joyful. He hadn't thought that 7 whirlpools would increase in power after being broken. The Yin energy around this Yin Fiend was extremely dense, and the wounds inflicted by the sword energies were more serious. Looking at the Yin Fiends struggling in the disorder, Suemo's heart relaxed slightly. Only now was he at an advantage. This Yin Fiend was really strong. The Yin Fiend that he had destroyed with one sword blow and the Yin Fiend in front of him now was not on the same level. Suddenly, the Yin Fiend gave a piercing yell. The Yin energy surrounding its body suddenly shrunk inward and started to gather. Suemo was shocked. The power of the chaos had started to falter. Even those broken sword energies had lost their sharpness. The Yin energy surrounding the Yin Fiend shrunk, its body becoming even more concentrated. The sword energies, when they sliced it, gave cracking sounds as though they were cutting leather. It knew a move like this. Suemo was dumbstruck at the endless moves this Yin Fiend had. He couldn't help but think it was bad. Even though he didn't know what the Yin Fiend would do next, he decided to attack first using another 7 whirlpools. 7 sword energy whirlpools once again appeared surrounding the Yin Fiend. The fragments of sword energy that had lost power were instantly sucked in by the 7 whirlpools. The 7 whirlpools instantly grew to twice its size. Under the high speed of revolution, the hissing became even more clear, shocking to the soul. Between the 7 whirlpools, the Yin Fiend was still compressing Yin energy, not paying attention to anything else. At this time, its body was the size of a bamboo basket, entirely gray-black like a soft ball of ink. Suemo gritted his teeth and forcefully revered his Ling force. Break! Boom! 7 gigantic whirlpools simultaneously exploded, countless pieces of sword energy shooting into the surroundings. The place that the Yin Fiend was at was the densest place of sword energy fragments, and the place most severely affected. In that instant, hundreds of sword energy fragments bombed the Yin Fiend's body. Pew pew pew. Countless ripples appeared on the Yin Fiend's inky black body, the Yin Fiend's body shuddered. A stream of blood came out of the corner of Suemo's mouth. When he had reversed the flow of his Ling power, he had injured his channels. However, his eyes were excited. This 7 whirlpools, it was definitely the strongest 7 whirlpools he had ever done. So there were times where the breaking of a sword move could increase its power. He seemed to understand something. The harm the second round of 7 whirlpools was great to the Yin Fiend. It could be seen from the stability of its body. Before, its compressed body had been like a ball of sticky ink, floating steadily in the Yar. After enduring a storm of countless sword energy fragments, its inky body seemed to show signs of instability. Occasionally, a Yin energy drop would drip down from its body like ink. However, before the droplet landed on the flow, the Yin energy would dissipate in the air. The Yin Fiend was completely infuriated this time. Suemo could clearly feel its anger, the anger passed on by its consciousness. At this moment, a little ball of inky Yin energy left the body of the Yin Fiend. What surprised Sui Mo was that this little ball of yin energy did not dissipate in the air after it separated. Suddenly, Sui Mo's heart jumped. He could feel the consciousness of the yin fiend was burrowing into this little ball of yin energy. Yin splinter. Thinking about the great power of the previous yin splinters, and looking at the inky black ball of yin energy, if the yin splinter was made from such dense yin energy, the power. Sui Mo shuddered in fear. What should he use? Li water burning heavens? Or seal soldiers? Or yin fire bead? Yin fire bead. Sui Mo suddenly thought that he had been thinking about using the yin energy of the yin bead to create a yin splinter. Hadn't he been just having a headache over the yin energy of the yin bead being too dense and hard to control with his consciousness? He stared at the thick yin energy ball that was floating in front of the yin fiend, concentrating on feeling the transformation it was undergoing. Sui Mo suddenly had a feeling. The yin fiend in front of him was the best teacher, teaching him how to use the yin energy and consciousness to make a yin splinter step by step. He took out a yin bead, copied the yin fiend and started to slowly feed his consciousness into the yin bead. Watching from the side, Pu Yao was stunned as he gaped at Sui Mo. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.